We're born ready.
All right, good evening. It is 6 p.m. It is Tuesday, November 9th. This is the Town of Spencer regular Board of Alderman meeting for the month of November. And with that, I officially call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum tonight. We have our full board present. And with that, we will now move to our invocation and Alderwoman Sledge. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been blessed with particular talents because the world we live in needs our individual involvement. Each of us is charged with a responsibility to contribute to the lives around us. Our shared talents make the road smooth when each of us has acted as the need arose. Father, guide us to use the talents you have given us to the betterment of this town and the citizens we serve. Grant us the wisdom we need to make the decisions needed as we move forward tonight and for this year. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll begin our meeting with a few recognitions this evening. And the first one we have is a recognition of our fire department and Fire Chief Lanning. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Morgan to start that.
I just want to say how proud I am that he has brought the department a full 180 degrees in a very short period of time. And the insurance commissioner was at a presentation Tuesday morning to present them with their new rating. They are now a Class 2 ISO rating, which out of all the fire departments, I think there are only 63 other fire departments in North Carolina that are rated a 2. And my congratulations go out to him and all of his staff and all of the firefighters. Congratulations.
Chief Lanning, come in here. A lot to be thankful for in this town, and Chief Lanning and our fire department is definitely one of them. So you guys have stepped up your game in the last year more than any of us could have imagined. So thank you again for your leadership.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Hovis, I think you had a few things you wanted to say as well.
I just want to thank you too, because I saw for Halloween that you had one of you guys on a table stationed out there for Halloween, and nobody was doing that. You were the only one, even across the bridge. Nobody was doing it but you. So I want to thank you for that, representing us, because it's a thankless job, and you know that. And even in your quote in the newspaper today, I was also glad to see where you kept talking about there was no iron team. You know, you're not doing this for the prestige or anything like that. You're doing it for the community and the morale. You know, just for you saying that, it doesn't take it helps money and equipment, yes, but at the end of the day, as a former chief, if you can keep morale up, it doesn't matter. You can keep your people, and you're doing that, and you're bringing them in. So congratulations and thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Thank
I had to go my staff come tonight, but it's like I said yesterday, I can't do it without them. So they deserve as much recognition as I do.
So wait a minute, are your staff here tonight?
I've got 3 of them. I got 2 of my captains. And
All right,
Oh.
stand up,
Please bring
y'all.
them in. Stand up, please. Thank you. And we're still waiting on coffee with the chief.
that was today.
Oh, it's not today? Doggone it, I knew I missed it.
His plot take you about 8 hours late.
There's probably a cold cup of coffee and a cold donut
So,
for you,
yes,
Sam.
a stale donut, I'll take it.
Chief, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, our next recognition is for our Winterfest volunteer group, and Mr. Morgan has another update on that.
Yes.
recognition.
This group of women, and headed up by Sherry Mason Brown, my wife included, Sherry Morgan, Corinne Malden, my stepdaughter Lauren West. and several others. They have just done a tremendous amount of work in a very short period of time. This is shaping up to be a premier event for Spencer. I hope the word is going out, but I want to thank them for all the generosity. I mean, these women are meeting within the hour again, and have been meeting and working on this thing for hours and hours, day in and day out. And I hope that God smiles down upon us and gives us good weather and a good turnout. But I wanted to recognize them, and again, they're not doing it for any kind of money, and the amount of work is just mind-boggling. So I wanted to thank them for what they've done.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Sledge?
Sam, can I add to your comments that as people came to the polls to vote, Kim Lentz had brought us the cards, and we handed those out to voters as they came. So hopefully we're spreading the word.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. All right, our next recognition is for our community garden group, and Mr. Miller.
Thank you, sir. A couple of weeks ago, in an early Saturday morning, about a dozen volunteers showed up at the 100 block of 2nd Street. There wasn't any fancy presentations or no outside guests or speakers or anything like that, but it was the start of a wonderful project by the Community Appearance Committee. With the donation of 2 above-ground planter boxes, the Spencer Community Garden was started. Already several flowers and other plants are growing at this present time. Special thanks goes to the Spencer Presbyterian Church for their donation of the land, and also under the leadership of Kyle Harris and Sky Allen. There'll be many other grand plans for this community garden. Hopefully next spring there will be more planter boxes in this garden. The goal is to raise vegetables in these boxes so as to help other citizens in our community if they need vegetables. The Community Appearance Committee is currently trying to recruit volunteers to help out with these boxes in the future. There's no town budget to support this garden. However, if you would like to sponsor a planter box or help out on the maintenance of these boxes, please contact the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And we have 2 final recognitions. One is for Catherine Perdoman Ayala and Kevin Figueroa from North Rowan Middle School and North Rowan High School, respectively, as students of the quarter. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Sechrist.
I had the pleasure of visiting North Rowan Middle School and North Rowan High School in the last 2 weeks to present this North Rowan Student of the Quarter. And I wanted to tell you just a little bit about the 2 students that were chosen by their school. Catherine is currently a 7th grader at North Rowan Middle School. And with the transition to middle school, many students have to make adjustments to merge into a new learning path, and life begins to take shape for them as young adults. And she has excelled as a maverick between this year and last. Her love of horses proved to be the outlet she needed to transition into North Rowan Middle School. She loves spending time with family and friends and has the love of crafting, and she also enjoys time outside, drawing and painting. And Kevin Figueroa was chosen by North Rowan High School as the first student of the quarter. His teacher, Mr. Buckard, said this about Kevin: he's a 10th grader and a creative designer who always takes the initiative in class, digs into his classwork, and asks higher level thinking questions and gives feedback to his peers and teachers. And we presented both of these students with very nice plaques from the town of Spencer. With we didn't have the new logo on it, but we had the other logo on it. It looked good because it said you're on the right track. So, and we will do this each quarter. We still have not done North Elementary, but that will either be coming up in the next couple of weeks, or we'll do both of them together, 2nd quarter. Thank you.
Very
And
good.
thank you to the town for sponsoring that.
And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for leading that and presenting those to our students and being
It was
our
an honor.
liaison to our local schools. All right, any other recognitions at this point? Okay, very good. With that, are there any adjustments to the agenda needed? And if there are not, I'll accept a motion to adopt.
Make a motion to adopt.
All right, it's a motion by Mr. Miller. Is there a second?
I'll second
Second
it.
by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right. Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. And with that, the first item is a public hearing for under General Statute 160A-58.24 and 160A-58.23, authorizing participating cities to enter into annexation agreements concerning future annexation to enhance orderly planning by such cities and in order to designate one or more areas which are not subject to annexation by one or more of the participating cities. And so with that, that is a long way of saying that we have been asked by the city of Lexington, who intends to annex property in Davidson County. And because of the North Carolina General Statute, they are obligated to get an agreement with the town of Spencer because we are in a similar proximity to the property they are looking to annex. Although it is across the Yadkin River in Davidson County, based on distances, they are statutorily obligated to enter into an agreement with the town of Spencer that basically says we have no intent to annex in the future into Davidson County. And so with that, Peter, anything else that we need to say on that? If not, we'll open it up for public hearing.
Nothing further.
Okay, with that, we will officially open the public hearing. Stacy, have we received any written correspondence related to this matter?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that wishes to speak at this public hearing? All right. Hearing none. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Sledge. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right. So the public hearing is officially closed at this point. And with that, we will move to item 6, which is public comment. And I have one emailed correspondence that was sent to the town clerk. Have we received any other correspondence, Stacy?
No.
Okay. So I'll read this first one and then we'll open it up for comment from those that are here tonight. This comment is from Miss Janice Sells at 321 Sowers Ferry Road. And it states, "Good evening, Mayor and board members. I am here about the suggestion that Sam Morgan made at the pre-agenda meeting about the speed bump on Sowers Ferry Road. I'm not sure what the immediate area he was talking about, but I live down the street from Sam, only 5 doors down, and I know he never talked to our family about the speed bump. What is the process on a speed bump being put in the middle of a road? Will there be a public hearing, or can just anyone complain to have a speed bump put in? This sounds like a complaint for the police chief, since this is his responsibility, since it is about speeding cars. I'm asking that I get some response from this so that I know what the process will be. Thank you, Janice Sells." All right. So that is one item. And are there those in the audience that wish to speak for public comment tonight? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to our, yes. Oh, yes, you do have one. Sorry, you have one on behalf of a citizen.
Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of Terry Schultz, who is president of the Spencer Council of Churches. We met this past week for the first time in 2 years since COVID started. And the town and the Spencer Council of Churches are going to have the senior citizen dinner this year. We're going to make an attempt to have it. It will be on Tuesday, December the 7th at noon at Oakdale Baptist Church with the regular meal from Marlowe's Barbecue, which we usually have. You can sign up at your church. There should be a sign-up sheet, or there are sign-up sheets around town, or you can call the town hall, or there are numbers on the flyers that are posted. And Stacy, luckily, was nice enough to post it on the town's Facebook page. So you can look on there and see the procedures for that too. We will be following COVID protocols. And I'm not gonna go into all of those, but, you know, it's pretty typical. That we'll be spaced out, have to wear a mask except when eating, etc. So we look forward to seeing that you come and hopefully And you can invite your friends, anyone 55 and older is welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, and with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda for the evening. And so with that, is there any need to pull any of the items before you for the consent agenda for further discussion? And if not, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a comment. I have a question that I'd like the council to.
Okay, we have public comment coming up, and, well, you want to speak for public comment? We just had that, so before we move on,
Yes.
why don't you come up for public comment? Absolutely.
Y'all moving on. Sorry. Leslie Talbot, 308 North Salisbury Avenue, Spencer, blood type O positive.
Really?
Just in case anybody needs to know. Universal donor. I was at the library the other day because I'm volunteering to be a storyteller. It's a nice word for liar. During the Winter Fest, we're going to be doing Yes, Virginia. There is a Santa Claus, and we'll be doing a la Victorian, and then we'll be doing Elsa because she's still popular, and we'll be doing an Elsa story the following weekend. But when I was up there, I noticed that we have a computer all of a sudden. It's not in the office. It's sitting out in plain sight. And I would like to know what it's for, because it's rather large and cumbersome. And, what's its purpose? Because I don't know many people who frequent that library, especially since most of them are young children and young mothers, that are interested in playing on a computer. If we had a bank of computers, it might be a different story because we could offer it to the high school students. But, what was the plan for this? And is it coming out of the book budget? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I look forward to getting an answer.
All right, moving on. The consent agenda. Is there a need to pull any item from the consent agenda for further discussion tonight?
No.
All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Hovis. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bish. All in favor? All right, all opposed? Consent agenda is approved. All right, the next item is considering ordinance 21-027 for utility vehicles. And this is the ordinance that we've been working on for probably close to a year now, that's gone through the state legislature. Basically, this amends our ordinance related to golf carts to now also allow the use of regulated utility vehicles. And so with that, I will read this particular ordinance so that the public is aware of the changes. And this is authorized by North Carolina Session Law 2021-97. Again, this is ordinance 21-027, which is an ordinance permitting and regulating the operation of utility vehicles on public streets within the town of Spencer, North Carolina. Whereas there is public interest in having a means of local travel that is cost-effective and energy efficient as an alternative to the use of motor vehicles, and whereas in 2016, the Board of Aldermen adopted Ordinance 16-14, amending chapters 70 and 71 of the town's Code of Ordinances pursuant to NC General Statute 160A-300.6 to permit and regulate the operation of golf carts on public streets within the town of Spencer, North Carolina. And whereas Session Law 2021-33 amended North Carolina motor vehicle laws to allow operation of modified utility vehicles as defined in North Carolina General Statute 20-4.0127 on certain roadways effective October 1st, 2021. And whereas Session Law 2021-97 provided authority for the town of Spencer to regulate utility vehicles as defined in North Carolina General Statute 20-4.01, Section 48C, on streets within municipal limits, notwithstanding provisions of North Carolina General Statute 20-50 and 20-54. And whereas the Board of Aldermen in the town of Spencer has determined that the safe, proper operation of utility vehicles on streets, roads, and highways within the town of Spencer is in the public interest, and if properly regulated, will promote the public health, safety, and welfare. Whereas the town wishes to regulate utility vehicles using the same policy statement, rules, and regulations as it does for golf carts. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Aldermen of the town of Spencer, North Carolina, that Section 1, Title 7, Traffic Code, Chapter 71, Traffic Regulations of the Town of Spencer Code of Ordinance is hereby amended to read as set forth herein. Section 70.01 Definitions. Modified utility vehicle. A motor vehicle that is manufactured for off-road use with equipment required by General Statute 20-121.1, Section 2, except a vehicle identification number, and has four wheels, an engine displacement greater than 2,400 cubic centimeters, an overall length of 142 inches or greater, an overall width of 58 inches or greater, an overall height of 70 inches or greater, a maximum speed capability of 40 miles per hour or greater, and does not require an operator or passenger to straddle a seat. Modified utility vehicle does not include an all-terrain vehicle, golf cart, or utility vehicle as defined in this section, or a riding lawnmower. Again, this is defining that modified utility vehicles would not be allowed. Utility vehicles, as defined by North Carolina General Statute 20-4.01, 48, Section 48C. Utility vehicle is a motor vehicle that is designed for off-road use and used for general maintenance, security, agricultural, or horticultural purposes. Utility vehicle does not include an all-terrain vehicle or golf cart as defined in this section, or a riding lawnmower. Title 7, Traffic Code, Chapter 71, Traffic Regulations of the Town of Spencer Code of Ordinances is hereby amended to add utility vehicles into the definition of carts described in Section 71.57 Policy Statement and referred to in 71.58 Rules and Regulations, read as set forth herein. Section 71.57 Policy Statement. This ordinance is adopted in the interest of public safety. Golf carts and utility vehicles as defined above in 70.01, together hereinafter carts, are not designed or manufactured to be used on public streets and roads hereinafter streets, and the town of Spencer in no way advocates or endorses their operation on streets. The town, by regulating such operation, is merely addressing safety issues. This ordinance is not to be relied upon as a determination that operation on streets is safe or advisable, even if done in accordance with this ordinance. All persons operating carts must be observant of and attentive to the safety of themselves and others, including their passengers, other motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. All persons that operate or ride carts on streets inside the town of Spencer do so at their own risk. The town of Spencer shall have no liability under any theory of liability for permitting carts to be operated on streets under legislative authority granted by the state of North Carolina, and pursuant to such legislative authority, such cart operation shall be in accordance with this ordinance. In Section 3, this ordinance shall become effective December 1st, 2021, if approved. All right. With that, are there any questions, any discussion from the board? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Motion by Mr. Miller,
Second.
second by Ms. Hovis. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? That is approved. All right. Next item on the agenda is to consider ordinance 21-025, which is a resolution and annexation agreement with the city of Lexington. This is attachment 3 in your agenda packet. And this annexation agreement pertains to the public hearing that we had earlier this evening. And with that, anything, Peter, that you need to mention to the board related to this agreement?
And just to clarify, we're asking for you to adopt an ordinance authorizing the agreement and also a resolution separately that is authorizing the town manager to waive a 60-day notice requirement contained in the annexation agreement per the request of the city of Lexington.
All right, and you'll see the ordinance itself is the last page in section 3. Are there questions from the board pertaining to the ordinance, resolution, or agreement? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt?
I move to adopt the resolution.
Okay, there is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, that is approved. You also need action on the ordinance and agreement as well. All right, so that is on the resolution. Is there a motion on ordinance number 21-025? It's a motion by Mr. Miller. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Sledge. Any further discussion? All in favor? Right. All opposed? The ordinance is approved. And finally, the annexation agreement itself. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Sledge. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? And that is approved as well. Thank you all. And with that, we will now receive a presentation from staff at SE Academy, and we will welcome you forward.
Good evening, everyone. I'm
evening.
Letitia Feemster. I'm the principal of SE Academy. I have with me my vice chairperson from the board of directors, Mr. James Davis. Tonight, what we have come forth with is sharing information about our school, as well as requesting more information about your municipal building. Okay? As we share here, this is more information about who we are with our mission statement of promoting academic excellence and ultimately producing lifelong learners and leaders by developing unique talents and gifts. When we look here, we had erected in the town of East Spencer. However, we have students from all over Rowan County who come to SE Academy. Next slide, please. It might be trying to warm up. I don't know. Sometimes that's like an old car. I don't know. But when we look here at SE Academy, it is named after a peer person in the town of East Spencer community, Essie Mae Kaiser Fox. And in actually June of 2021, we erected as SE Academy. Next slide. When we look here, we do offer a Common Core curriculum. However, we are infused with a STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math curriculum components there. We do similar things as a public school with the offering of a free and reduced lunch program. We're looking at our data-driven instruction. Like I said before, we have the Common Core with essential standards, and we now serve K through 7. Our plan, we will go to K through 8, and then we're going to add a high school in the future there. Next slide. When we look here at our students, we make sure that we have well-rounded students, whether it is actually on field trips. You can see here with our STEM activities. We've had our kindergarten graduation. We see here Miss Molly Eisenhower pictured there. She was one of our former teachers for kindergarten when we were actually a charter school. But then we also had this year our Hugo Hornet from Charlotte Hornets. He came to visit for the book club there. So we're making sure that our students are reading because that's very important. So they have 21 days of where they have to promise us they're going to read for 30 minutes to their parents. But of course, we know that it goes beyond that, but that's a start to get them motivated. And we can see that we have support from the community. We have Greek organizations and other organizations that support us with school supplies and things of that nature. Next slide, please. As we look here, our current needs, we are looking at, we know that you all will be moving out probably the end of this year, early next year into another location in Spencer. We would like to know, if possible, if you have future plans for this building, and what it would be for us to actually take a look and see if we are have the capability of being into this site. We have actually come to this building to do observation. Thank you, Peter, for letting us come and do the tour of the building. And we believe that this will be a nice location for SC Academy as we look at this building and what it could do to fulfill our needs. So we just would like to know, I know that you may not have that decision made for tonight, but we just want to put in a ask to see what is it that you all plan for this building in the future after you all move out, and how long does it take, what is the process, and so that we can decide. And right now our board would like to have this building, but just to see what the process may be. So that's what our current needs are. As we look to the next slide. So again, our future actually plans with a new location. We're going to add additional grade levels and have additional teachers. So with that, we hope that we can have in the town of Spencer growth here in this building. And at this time I have Mr. Davis, if he wants to add anything.
To give a little bit more insight, currently we have opened up with a virtual academy along with in-house tutoring, in-house services. That is at Southern City Amy Zion Church over in East Spencer. We currently serve 37 students that have come in. They receive funding through the Opportunity Scholarship so they can come. And then the board is taking on the responsibility of raising the extra funds to support the school. We are looking to increase the amount of students as we transition from charter to public-private format. Some of our parents didn't understand how to fill out the Opportunity Scholarship in the time frame that took. But right now we're looking at growing that 30 to, we have about 50 more students that are waiting for January for the reopening of the Opportunity Scholarship so they can come back to the smaller classroom settings that we provide. So we're currently looking for a facility that can house those 80 students when we get started next August. But we also want to be ahead of the curve by starting in the spring to bring the original 35 students into a building. Right now we have 20 that come in.
Yes, we have about 20 students face to face, and then the other population happens to be virtual. So we do have opportunity for our parents to who want their children to be virtual to remain virtual if they choose to. But we still offer like the field trips if they want to come from home and go on our field trips. So we do have the opportunity for our students as well.
So we would like to entertain any questions or.
All right, great. Thank you for the presentation. We'll open it up now for the board. What questions do you have this evening?
I don't have a question, but I will go on record as saying I think they're doing a really good job. I've been involved in watching SC Fox School grow since it started, and I've been real impressed with their students. Very well behaved, knowledgeable, and very engaged in learning every time I've been around. So my hat's off to you. That's hard to do sometimes.
Thank you.
And we will say, one of the reasons a lot of our parents want to come back to us, there's students who did not experience growth early on, started to experience growth while they were with us. So some of those parents just had the misunderstanding when we did transition over to how re-registration would have to go through. So we lost a handful to public schools when we transitioned from the charter academy to the private academy. So, but they are coming back in groves, asking when we can get them back in. So we're currently just waiting on that Opportunity Scholarship to support them. So that would be their only contribution to having to get back into the school.
Ms. Sledge?
I don't have children in school, my grandkids are too small, but,
They're never too small, pre-registered. We got you.
well,
That's the easy way. Hey, that helps me out. So I know they come in this 8 months. We got 36 months. We good. We got you.
you said that you're not a charter school, but you're,
So
what's the difference between the charter school and the private school?
Well, we're actually more of the private school sector now. And with the private school sector, the funding is different as it comes down to us. So whereas we had more channels, different channels of funding as a charter school versus with our private school. So we're still trying to keep the main concept here of keeping smaller classrooms, because with our children, we're serving the underserved children and those who need more attention. But we don't want them to have that social distance. We want to keep the social emotional learning going on within our classroom. So so that they'll have similar environment of a public school and then a charter school, but it's in our private school where we're serving those who need that individualized attention. But we keep the smaller population where we look at classrooms sizes that are 10 or maybe even 15 and less.
and as far as what we do for funding, they do the opportunity scholarship. So for public schools, everybody knows here in public schools in North Carolina, public schools per child get roughly $14,000 per school. Per student that's in the school. With the opportunity scholarship, we bring in roughly $4,700 per student, and then we raise the rest. So what we did is we decided to do that portion because instead of having the parent do a contribution, because we're targeting kids coming from disadvantaged homes, we didn't want them worried about how they would pay for a private school format for their kids. So we raised the money, and their only obligation is they have to fill out the opportunity scholarship and receive that as their portion of what they would normally pay to go to a private school.
Do you have oversight from the public education?
We have oversight from the Private Schools Association. So just like Salisbury Academy, just like
North Hills.
North Hills,
Yes.
they're all part of the same private school academy. We have to do testing, we have to have our curriculum, we have to have everything, but it gives us a base to explore. I think we were just talking, our students start exploring critical thinking. Right now, everybody knows the school is set up for memorization. We don't want them to just remember. We want them to be able to apply their knowledge going forward. So that's the difference, and by doing it in a smaller setting, it helps us do those things with those kids.
Talk to us a little bit about schedule and kind of space needs. So it sounds like you were looking for a place starting in January, correct?
Well,
Yes, yes, that is more of the concept of us looking for a school in January. We do the same distancing that most schools do there. And then with our smaller classroom setting, that helps us out a lot. So with that, was it back here? I heard it, the question.
oh, no, it was.
You.
Oh, no, sure.
that
me.
way. I was like, I'm hearing
It's all
it
around
back
you.
there. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, like, okay, all right. So
Okay. So January, and you'll bring back, I guess, a portion of your students, but then you're looking to grow and expand that
Yeah.
by the fall
Yes.
semester.
Yeah.
And the whole other purpose is we still stay within COVID guidelines. So we have found, I know y'all know that in this county, we found a lot of parents that do want to still have the virtual option.
Right.
But they want to have that small setting. So by keeping both of those on the table, we found that we can expand strategically throughout the next year. And then from there, we look at growing out to other locations where the high school would not be housed in the same as the elementary and middle. Because let's be honest, what high school kid wants to be in the same room as their siblings. So those are things we're looking at now. So we wanted to find a place that could house the elementary and middle, and then as we expand out, hopefully as COVID dissipates even more, we would open up to new locations throughout the area.
Okay. All right. So then talk to me about kind of space needs. I know y'all have walked through this building and seen
Yes.
it. How do you envision that working for what your plan would be for the school in January?
yeah, so when we look at our space needs, right now we are we serve a population where we have combined classes. So for example, we have K-1 teacher. Because of the smaller classroom environment, we can do that. And then we have a second grade class. And then we're looking at splitting 3 through 5 and then 6 and 7. And that helps us out with also the numbering there. And then plus, because we will still have the virtual component of those students who want, or parents who want their students to be at home. So that still also helps us there. When we looked here at the possibilities of the rooms, we could see where we had opportunities to actually have still the same setup for our students, as well as have the extra spacing for them to have a somewhat of a cafeteria type of setting to actually go eat. Because, you know, when you sit in one room, most of the days you need a different setting. So knowing that our students don't drive, we want to get them out of the classroom. And we even looked outside and we were looking at, well, where can they play? Because that's going to be an important factor too. So with that, we figured out the space in between the buildings. We was like, oh yeah, well, we can make that. So keep in mind, if with education, our imagination runs very big, okay? So we are creative of how we do things, making sure that we're keeping our students safe. Our parents knowing that they still have the quality education as well as the location for our students and for their children, because their children are our children.
Okay, very good, thank you. Other questions from the board?
So this being the largest room, are you gonna subdivide this room right here as far as that goes?
This could serve as a subdivision, or it could come as our meeting room, because we try to do motivational mornings.
Okay.
So this could be the mass area where we're going to meet, or it could serve as our meeting room as well, far as administration is concerned. So there could be multiple opportunities as we walk through and saw this area as well.
So is there enough rooms in the building to make different classrooms that you're asking for?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Are we talking about a lease program, or are we talking about buying the building, or what are we talking?
And that's for further discussion between you all and our board of directors of how we can actually work this out.
Very good.
Yeah, we wanted to come to you first to find out what you would see as being on the table, whether you would be willing to lease it or if you were willing to, I know how some municipals want to move on from buildings and don't want to have the liability of just having another building on their books. So we wanted to come present it now for y'all to have that discussion on how y'all would like to move forward so we can determine what's the best course of action.
Okay.
Very good.
This is an old building too. Have you looked at, is there any need for investigation?
Well, and that's one of the things I was going to bring up. You know, structurally, that's part of the reason we're moving out is the building does have some cracks in the block walls and things like that. It's not obviously in danger of falling down or anything like that. But you know, it's aged, it's old. It's not very energy efficient, so it's not maybe the best of conditions. And that's one thing that we would have to work through with our town attorney as well, making sure, especially if we were to consider a lease type option, would have to kind of vet as far as the use as a school, because this building was set up as dormitories at one point for the railroad. And so, you know, it's not very conducive to our operations. We've made do, and just making sure that from a school perspective that there are no challenges there or liabilities as well. So we'd have to investigate all of that, I think. But yeah, it's not a new building for sure.
Well, the good news is there's some grants and things out there that are for upfitting new buildings that have these type of challenges that we qualify for, but we're also a nonprofit. So we qualify for certain grants and everything. We just have, so those would be things that we could talk about as we go forward that will help us to re-up the building, change Wi-Fi systems, be sure that, as you just talked about, the energy levels, because we are looking to be in a green school at some point. So we're talking to people about bringing that infrastructure into our school to teach our kids about green energies. So those things would be things we can discuss.
Very good.
All right. Are there other questions from the board? All right. Well, thank you for your presentation. We know you're under kind of a short timeline, so we'll take this under advisement, and we will we'll talk internally as a board and with our Peter and our administration, and get back to you soon.
All right. Thank
All
you
right,
so much
thank
for your
y'all.
time.
Thank you much.
Right. Next item on our agenda is our departmental reports, and we will start with Mr. Harris in our Planning Department report.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I want to begin with a look at the permits that have been issued recently. I'll skip through the typical permits, zoning permits, subdivisions, and COAs. I actually wanted to skip to the event permits because we have a number of events coming up, including the Winterfest and the holiday parade. Obviously, the town is doing its part to make sure that both of these events run smoothly, and part of my role is to help facilitate and coordinate the permit review process among our departmental leadership. We've been working closely with Kim Lentz and Sherry Mason Brown on the Winterfest, and I believe tonight with the consent agenda, y'all approved certain street closures that will be necessary both for the Winterfest and for the Thanksgiving parade. We're still in the sort of middle of the Winterfest review process, but I do anticipate there should be no reason that the event doesn't go forward smoothly. There are a couple of lingering questions related to smaller things like whether or not outdoor heating will be provided and other things like that. But the major issues like the location of tents, street closures, location of water barriers and things like that have all pretty much been settled out at this point. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about Winterfest, but I'm confident that that event will go forward pretty smoothly. With regard to the Thanksgiving parade, we've been working with an individual named Tammy, I think Pinkston, and she's coordinating the town's, she's coordinating the, on behalf of their event committee, the permit review process with the town. We're still reviewing that, but we're working closely with them. There are a number of additional intersection closures, obviously, that are required for staging of the parade, the floats and everything like that. And so I've been relying on Joel to make sure that he can work closely with us to make sure that we're doing everything we should be doing for street closures. Do y'all have any questions about the Winterfest or Thanksgiving parade? There's a lot involved in that, but the Thanksgiving parade's been happening for decades. I have no reason to believe it won't go forward smoothly again this time. I think just with staff turnover in the town, it's important to make sure that each year we give it the attention it needs to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks.
Cal, I don't have any questions reference to the Winterfest, but I have some questions reference to some zoning. So if you're done with that, are you done with your report?
No, I'm just,
okay.
I'll actually proceed to the conditional rezoning case. Is that what you had questions about?
I'm getting ready to, but go ahead if you're
Okay.
not.
So with regard to the conditional zoning case, obviously this has been a significant case that the town is processing. The neighborhood meeting took place last week on November 3rd, at which time we held a general discussion between myself and the neighborhood representatives who came out. We discussed the nature of the rezoning, the town's process for rezoning, as well as the conditions on the use of the property. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So this is the property at 200 South Salisbury Avenue. Obviously, they're proposing to rezone from C29 commercial to VSR, vehicle service and repair. And that would be a conditional district, meaning that additional conditions and limitations would be imposed on the property to make sure that it's compatible with the surrounding area. The purpose of the neighborhood meeting last week was to explore the potential of any additional conditions that need to be added to the conditional zone to make sure that any potential adverse impacts to surrounding properties are properly dealt with. Now, at that meeting, we did not hear any opposition to the rezoning. In fact, two of the most immediate property owners adjacent to the subject property came out and spoke in support of the rezoning. There was one individual who lives further out in the neighborhood who came to ask a number of questions, but she did not speak in opposition at that time. Now, at the planning board meeting, which took place last night, we did hear opposition. So there was a property owner as well as the tenant of that property who came to speak clearly in opposition to the rezoning. And I can provide a transcript and a minutes of that meeting once those are available. Also, one of the individuals who attended the neighborhood meeting who did not speak in opposition submitted a written statement in opposition to the rezoning. So where the case currently stands is that it's mixed. We have certain neighbors who don't mind, who believe that it will be a benefit to the neighborhood, and then we have an additional number of property owners who are clearly opposed. The town has done everything that it should do to facilitate the process. We've held the required forums to solicit input from the neighbors. And we've advertised and noticed all meetings as we're required to do. The next step will be on December 14th. This board will conduct its legislative hearing, which will be the last opportunity for public input, and then the board will make its decision. Now, I know I did, and this is actually a later agenda item, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I did submit a fairly lengthy staff report to y'all with a detailed background of the case. What I will be presenting to you ahead of the December 14th meeting are a number of additional documents, including the planning board staff report, minutes from that meeting, and a summary, because I know there are so many documents and exhibits related to this case that what I will provide is a general summary to organize it for the benefit of this board, so that you have all the information you need to make a decision. So, Alderwoman Hovis, do you have a specific question about that rezoning case?
Yeah, I do, because if it's up for rezoning, I know you had a planning board meeting over it last night, right?
Yes.
And the outcome of that was was what?
Yes, so the planning board recommended approval of the rezoning. So they made a motion saying that, in their opinion, the rezoning is consistent with the town's future land use planning goals, as well as reasonable and in the public interest.
Now, I guess my question to that then for the planning board, and it's going to be coming back before the BOA, is the presentation of this, or what you guys are doing. This is in reference to the tenant, but not to the owner. Is this a request of the owner or the tenant situation? What are we
Yes.
doing?
At the beginning of the process, the owner submitted an affidavit authorizing the tenant to act on his behalf throughout the entire rezoning process. So the owner has not been involved in a day-to-day basis on this rezoning. The tenant, Michael King, has been handling the vast majority of the meetings, the application process, and correspondence with the town.
So on this codification that we went through, why is there any questions, and why is it so hard for you right now if the rules are already established? What are the questions that are making this so complicated and coming back before us? Why isn't it something that, if that wasn't zoned for it and now you making it zoned for it, why are we breaking the rules or bending the rules reference to this now?
So that's a good point that you make, and I want to address it. This is a standard procedure that any town goes through for a request to rezone. We're not breaking the rules. We're not issuing any variance. It's just the matter of the fact that any property owner who wants to use the property in a different way must petition to rezone the property. And this is one of the avenues that's established by state law and by the town to get the property rezoned. So it's what I would say is standard procedure for the town to go through this process.
I guess lastly, you nailed what I was going to say. Then it shouldn't be the tenant doing it. It should be the owner of the property, shouldn't it? Or
Well, the owner can authorize anyone to act as their agent.
Okay.
So typically the owner will go through the process themselves, but they're not obligated to. By law, they can submit an affidavit that's notarized and authorize another individual to act on their behalf throughout the entire process.
Jay
which has
came
been
in.
done.
Somebody said something. Jay, you had came in, reference to what he's saying, reference to where the law lies on the owner requesting versus the tenant.
The owner can designate an agent to act on their behalf, for zoning applications. And I think in this case, it was more effective to have the tenant there anyway. He's the one doing all the work. I thought the meeting was very positive. We're talking about the neighborhood meeting.
Yes.
I thought the meeting was very positive. I thought the owner was very forthcoming. We had several people in the audience that asked questions. We had one particular neighbor that was pretty engaged in asking questions, but the tenant, who's doing all this at his own expense, was pretty forthcoming. And I thought typically an owner is going to set this meeting up on their own. But I think that Kyle recognized appropriately that this particular owner might not sort of set it up and have it as comprehensive as Kyle was able to manage it that night. So I appreciate it. I think it went really well. I think he followed exactly what the ordinance requires and suggests. And I think it was a productive meeting. I think they got some concessions to get to a good recommendation or good information for the planning board. Goes to the planning board next.
And the planning board actually met last night.
Okay, so yeah, I thought it went really well. But yes, the owner can designate an agent to pursue these.
Thank you, Jeff.
So Kyle, what was the nature of, at the meeting last night, planning board? What was the nature of the opposition to?
So I guess let me ask a general question to the board. Do you want me to address all of this now during my departmental report, or should we wait for the agenda item where we're already scheduled to talk about all this? I'll be happy to answer the
I
questions
think
now.
while we're talking about it, it's acceptable to go ahead and finish. The agenda
Okay.
item's simply to set the public hearing date.
Okay.
So I think, let's go ahead and,
Okay, that's fine, and I just wanted to make sure. So could you repeat your question?
Just after what you mentioned that at the meeting last night of the planning and zoning
Yes.
committee, that there were members there of the neighborhood that were in opposition to this project being there, this business being there. What was the nature of that opposition?
So one individual submitted a written statement, and her concern was that the visual impact with so many cars being parked on the site was not appropriate for the neighborhood. The other individual who owned property at 111 2nd Street, as well as the tenant of that property, came to the meeting and also spoke in opposition. The owner, her concern was that, in her view, the use of the property as an auto repair shop would begin the process. She said it looks like a junkyard, and that she's worried that it will snowball into becoming a junkyard that the town can't control, essentially was her point. So she thought it was not appropriate for the historic nature of the area, and she thought it would lead to a decline and slide in the quality of the neighborhood. That was her concern.
all right.
Which brings up a good point. It seems like I remember you were making a comment at last month's meeting that the owner was going to work with us and somehow or another make these vehicles disappear and only have one vehicle out on the corner. And yet it seems just the opposite has happened over the past month. Every vehicle that is there for servicing has either been parked in the front or along the side of the street.
So,
There were no less than 7 vehicles there this evening when I came by.
so Mr. King would respond that all the vehicles there are there on a transitional basis. However, you know, I think what I would encourage this board to do is visit the property periodically over the next month, observe for yourself the condition of the property, the number of vehicles that are stored there, and that information will help you make a decision about whether to approve or deny it. The applicant has said repeatedly that he's doing his best to limit the number of vehicles on the site, but it does continue to be a problem. And ultimately, if the rezoning gets denied, they can no longer operate there. So that's the ultimate decision that this board has to make.
I forgot, how long has this been going on, reference to this, what we're addressing now?
What did we say last, we said it's
We said it last
five,
month,
it
but
was 4 months,
4
so we're
months?
going on 5 months. I think that's right.
we're going
Well,
to 5 months.
yeah.
And if it's 5 months, then I have to be with Alderman Morgan again, reference to, I don't know why we're kicking the can down the road. I don't know why it is that the BOA's got to get ready to decide on something where if the red flags are already here, why are we still entertaining this?
Well, because we have to follow a due process.
Well, no, what I mean is why is there still question of 7 cars being there kind of thing? Isn't there something that can be said to him before it gets to this point? Why hasn't anything been said to him before is getting to this point? Because the code enforcement part of it and the vehicles being out there is something that can be addressed, not have to be worried about as far as the process of what he's going through.
Because he is, while he's going through this process, he is still in violation of our ordinances. So I think that is a very good point.
Right.
We can certainly, obviously, yes, the property still needs to meet the town standards for parking of vehicles. I guess the challenge has been so far, and the vehicles there change by day to day and by hour of day, but we can certainly make sure that the town is doing everything it needs to do to properly enforce the town's codes.
And Kyle, do understand, I just don't like where it's always the Board of Aldermen's got to get their hands dirty. We got to be the bad guy to keep saying, well, if he don't do this by the time he gets ready to come before us to ask for something, then we've already been keeping score on what he does. And each one of us, if we see a car, that's not our job. And for when you made that comment just now, I guess that is what made me go do what I'm asking you now. We shouldn't have to worry about telling or keeping up with how many cars is out there. That's not ours to do. And for you to make that comment, I need you to be careful of that.
No, I understand where you're coming from. The purpose of the comment was simply to say that ultimately the decision is a legislative decision that you'll have to make. And part of that is a judgment on whether or not the applicant is doing what they need to do to convince the town that they deserve the rezoning. So if there continues to be issues with vehicles stored on the lot, then that would demonstrate that they are not acting in good faith, which would be, not in their favor for the ultimate outcome. So obviously the town will do, staff will do our part. We'll visit the property, take photographs, take notes. My comment was simply that if you observe the site and you see continued violations, what that means is that the owner or the tenant is not upholding their part of the rezoning process.
I guess my question would be, why did the owner of the property not let him know before he got into all of this that property was not appropriate for what he planned to do?
I can't speak to that.
Go under rent the building,
Yeah.
that's very obvious.
Yeah.
I think it's up to the tenant, Mr. King right now, for the next 30 days, to be on his very best behavior, and he should be setting a good example for all of us, including the town and the citizens, that he would be a good neighbor. And if he doesn't do it in the next 30 days, I don't see that he's got a leg to stand on. Now, he's got some good points. I've listened to him at the same time. He needs to be careful what he does in the next 30 days.
All right. Mr. Harris, you want to proceed with the rest of your report?
Yes. So, all right, the planning board is currently down to 3 members. So we do have 2 candidates who have been interviewed. The chair, Jim Mosier, has written letters of recommendation for both of those members, And so they will come before this board at the next meeting for their a decision on their appointments. And those individuals are Jessica Klaus, and the other individual is Tim Wachowski. So the 2021-2022 Hometown Innovation Grant is currently ongoing. I provided an update to you previously on the nature of that program, but essentially it's a special one-time facade grant for commercial properties to improve the appearance of their properties, specifically to revitalize the storefronts. We did send out 70 mailers to eligible properties, so that was our sort of mailing blast to everyone who may be eligible to provide information on how to apply and the deadline to apply. And that deadline is December 1st, 2021. And I have already spoken to a number of property owners who are interested in applying. Again, we'll need to make sure that all of those applications are in by December 1st. And I'll skip through a couple of these, but the CAC is also exploring a potential plan for improvements or to recommend certain improvements on Salisbury Avenue and Jefferson Street, such as new signage, landscaping, and other improvements. The HPC and CAC are also looking into a vintage sign restoration program. Obviously, the board in its annual budget adopted $5,000 for this program, and so we're currently in the process of Sky is prioritizing certain, is creating an inventory of vintage signs, and we're figuring out which ones are the priority to restore. All right, and I guess the only other thing is that and I'll let James speak about this more during his report, but the iWork portal is finally about to launch. We're planning a soft launch of the portal, which would allow people to submit code enforcement complaints as well as permits via a new online portal. So we're really excited about that. All right, do y'all have any other questions for me?
All right, any other questions? Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you, Mr. Harris. All right, next up is Mr. Osborne with our code enforcement report for the month.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
fellow board members. You're having a good evening? Good as it can be. So far.
Tell us.
October, I had a total of 20 cases at the time of my report. 12 were remained open at the time. I had 1 enforced abatement, and at the time I had 408 total cases for the year. Issued 7 notice of violations, 4 notice of a bill for abatements, and like Kyle stated, we have actually completed the portal, and it's completed. Town manager Peter and I have talked about how we're going to launch that, so we're going to give the link to some folks, let some people play with it, look at it, see how it works, find any bugs, and find anything else that we can do to make it a little bit better in the future.
And so what that means is we are looking to have, whether it be staff, whether it be this board, our appointed boards, and maybe we have some frequent customers who like to contact us. Get everybody who's got a particular interest involved and try it out. And once we feel good about how it's working, then we'll make a big splash and make sure people understand that it's available.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. You a bit articulated on it a bit more. Okay, so you notice that my pie charts have changed a little bit. I've adjusted my statuses a little bit to kind of help sort that out a little bit for me as I'm working through things, so I know how to kind of handle things. And so for the month of October, you'll see that I've got the notices of bills in there added into it, so that way you can see the amount of properties that are being abated through the pie chart as well. It's not just simply an open, it's actually something being abated and waiting on bills. And of course, move here. That being said, my overview for 2021 has changed, so it looks a little bit different. But it encompasses all my statuses that are out there presently, and gives a more accurate picture of the way the 2021 year has been flowing when it comes to statuses of open and closed or abated cases. The remainder of my cases I have for 2020 and 2019, those are starting to drop off. I have a couple of those that are starting to drop off. Like I said last month, we're getting some investors in town that are interested, and they're reaching out to me and asking about properties that people may be in a situation where they're upside down in their house or they're abandoned. And so I've been kind of helping them out, kind of lead them to homes that need some assistance, either financially or physically, need to be repaired. So that's a positive. That is Jupiter Sky organization out of Charlotte has been recently contacting me. So her name's Allie Walker. She's been reaching out to me and asking about some property. She's already, believe it or not, looking to buy the David Dobie house at 411 South Iredale, the one we just debated last month, which we got that all cleaned up right before the end of the month. So that's gone. But she's looking to purchase the property and to bring it up to standard for medium to low cost living.
Which property? I'm sorry.
It's a 411 South Iredale Avenue, the David Dobie house, which we just had the ordinance on.
Can I ask you a question about Mr. Dobie? You said about 2 months ago that Mr. Dobie's moving some of his stuff back on Snyder Street, whatever you want to call it.
Snyder Street.
Snyder Street. And I drove down there. Is that in our jurisdiction?
It's in the ETJ.
Okay.
Just
Do we
on
have
the-
any say-so in that as far as that goes?
Well, I don't have nuisance authority in the ETJ.
We have a say-so in that we report that to Rowan County.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Because it is a mess.
Correct. And the county does have code violations on that property, and the Dobies do have some things that they're trying to work off that property, and specifically the pile of pallets that are down there.
Yeah,
His brother has been working diligently trying to get that removed.
he is.
With my conversations I had with him, he's been working on getting that out there. He's off that property, but it's only the pallets that I'm aware of that the county's pressing on him right now with.
So the county does know about it.
They know about the property right now. The only thing they pressed on was the pallets. That's I'm
Okay.
aware of.
As long as somebody knows about it, because it is a mess. I feel sorry for the neighbors.
That's something I went through extensively trying to find ways to find the authority to press on that, but it just happens to be literally feet away from the corporate limits, and I just
I
can't.
thought it was, but I knew it was close.
Yeah, it's just right outside of my authority to abate.
Okay, thank you,
There's
sir.
nothing I can do with that, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Not to put you on the spot, but I had a reason to ask about 307 North Yakin, not only because Ms. Howard is in the room, but also I spoke to Mark, and I just know what the status was, because the last time I spoke to him, he kind of said that things are not necessarily resolved over there. Do you know what's going on?
Well, what's going on is the tenant in apartment A, who's caused the majority of the problems, is being evicted. And so he's been kind of tearing up the apartment. The door's been pulled off the hinges twice, apparently.
Really?
He's in the process of trying to repair it. He's got broken windows, a number of things going on in that apartment, and the landlord had it and took him to court and had him served with papers to be evicted. So he should be out of that apartment, according to the tenant, by the 17th of this month.
Good, good.
All right, good. Okay. Okay.
I heard, but the
Well,
midnight rains are too much.
keep your fingers crossed. See.
Yeah.
All right, are there other questions from the board at this time?
Yes, I would like to speak about one of my favorite subjects, the appearance of this town, or I should say the lack thereof. On my way home this evening, my little journey from Bojangles to Sowers Ferry Road, I counted 12 vehicles parked in the yards in unprepared surfaces. As I turn on the Sowers Ferry Road at dear old 104 Sowers Ferry Road, I see 2 vehicles parked in the front yard and a third making an attempt to turn into and park among the pine trees. To address some of our citizens' letters to us and code enforcement, I drove by 400 Jordan Avenue the other day, and lo and behold, there's still sits that tent out in the front yard. So I'm going to be a thorn in everybody's side. I don't care who they are, their status or whatnot, but I want this town cleaned up. I want people to start taking pride. I don't care if they're renters. I don't care if they're property owners, but this town has let these problems slide, especially for the chronic troublemakers, like the people that live in the Purple House and all up and down our streets. I'm tired of it. I'm 71 years old, and, we keep seeing, here was another report. This person, overgrown lot or a junk vehicle, Either we finally put some teeth in our codes and our penalties, or we just roll over and play dead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morgan, I'd agree with the comment about the parking on unimproved surfaces. That does seem to be increasing throughout town. So I think it's important that we focus on that, educate our citizens, and start to crack down on the constant violators of it as well. So, other comments or questions for Mr. Osborne? Okay, thank you, sir. I know you're busy. All right, next item is our police department report. I see Chief James.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, good evening.
Good evening.
Hope all of you are well, and I did get to see Ms. Sledge and Mr. Miller last night, and wanted to thank all of you for the prayers for my dad. And Ms. Sledge and I talked about that last night, and I had a tear in my eye, and I think she did in hers, but I appreciate your prayers.
How's he doing?
It's a miracle. He went home Friday.
Did he? Good.
And clinically, he shouldn't even be alive. So a lot of prayer and prayer works. I believe in that. So
very good.
But thank you all very much for that. I have provided you, as always, the activity log report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about any of those activities or any police operations whatsoever.
All right, any questions for Chief James at this point? I know we will be discussing a little later the potential agreement with the Sheriff's Department for additional support in the interim as we look to bring on more staff.
Appreciate
So
that.
we can talk about more about that later. Any questions for Chief James at this point? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next item is Chief Lanning and our fire department report.
Mayor and board, it's good to see you again. My report, as always, I try to keep it sweet and simple. Obviously, the ladder 75, as we discussed last meeting, is out of service indefinitely. And at y'all's direction with that was to contact the Transportation Museum. In a roundabout way, kind of had an unplanned conversation with Rowan Cabarrus Community College. They have used that truck 5 or 6 times this past year for classes. So with y'all's approval, would to, I guess, formally ask them if we were to make a donation out of that truck, would the board be against it being to Rowan Cabarrus Community College, where as long as they would be willing to make those repairs, it could still be of use in some degree, for, you know, the upcoming students in the fire service.
It'll be a donation to them, is that right?
Correct.
Would we have-
I
would-
just, I didn't, I
would
wanna
we
make sure
have
y'all are
to-
okay with that or
Well,
not.
I don't know if I remember what we did with the old 48 Mac. Well, would we have to designate that vehicle as surplus and would be, I'm not sure the procedure,
I'm not either.
but
Yeah,
I think it's,
believe we would.
but I think
and
that's an
then-
excellent solution.
Right.
Sure.
But I think it has to be declared surplus.
Surplus.
I may be wrong on that. We may need JD's to weigh in on that, but then once we do that,
Yeah, there's an administrative way to
Yeah.
do it, and we would need to follow that process to be able to.
that's an excellent suggestion.
Now-
Repair it and use it.
So obviously the community college has a much greater budget for things like that than we do. So that was one of the things the gentleman, he's like, well, he said, let me just unofficially run it by his supervisor, see if there would even be an interest. So we obviously don't even know if that would be a legitimate possibility. But like I said, I know they've used it over and over, and versus them having to continue to borrow from somebody
That'd be fine.
if we were going to donate it, whether here or there.
Jay?
I heard my name, but yeah, you need to declare it, just like any other personal property, you'd have to declare it surplus.
Yeah.
And then you would either put it up for auction, or as you mentioned, if there's somebody you can donate it to, you can donate it to another nonprofit or another, governmental agency. Or you could do a straight sale, to another governmental agency if somebody else wanted it. But you would, first step be to declare it surplus.
So it's the board's direction then to Chief and to Peter for next month's meeting to go ahead and bring forth
Yeah.
that forth as an agenda item?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
And then I wanted to hit real quickly on the spec process. I know there was the motion made to begin that process. I've met with 2 truck manufacturers thus far, which is just the process for that, building a spec of the fire truck, what, for us, for Spencer, what that design would look like, what attributes, you know, specific to Spencer that we need. So but there's been 2 questions with both of those manufacturers. Is one, what is a time frame? 2, what is a threshold in terms of money? And for them, if let's say the cap is going to be 800,000, just give or take, it's hard for them to truly build us a truck without knowing what that looks like. Because there's certain things, hey, we can't do, obviously, if we're the bar set here or here.
Yep.
And that may be something we may not be able to answer, but it was
Yeah,
asked
and I
of
don't
me.
know that it's something we can answer tonight necessarily. I do think that we collectively need to talk about it, and then Peter, you know, working through as far as financing options for that, how we might go about doing that, and what, you know, what's affordable based on our kind of debt threshold.
In my conversations with Chief Lanning, you know, I think the current goal is that we start establishing the framework of what neighborhood we're going to be in, and then from there we can put together the financing or purchasing strategy, and then we would, of course, when we get to the point of making a purchase, depending on direction, it would either be a formal bid process, it could be a piggyback process. You know, there's different co-op process. There's different processes we could take once we kind of know what our specs are going to be, but we also, as part of that, do need to develop the funding strategy.
Yeah, it concerns me putting a price out there
Yeah.
in front
Sure.
to manufacturers, knowing that they're going to turn around and bid on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I almost think, you know, they're wanting to put the cart before the horse. We need to, I guess, assess what are the things we absolutely have to have on a new engine.
Absolutely.
And develop that, and then also a list of what would be the nice to have things.
Yes.
And prioritize that, and then let them start to put together a package based on what we know we need to have and what options we might like on that.
Yeah.
I agree. I know with Pierce, I met with them last week, and that truck was a bare necessity. again, as a building block, hey, let's start with this. They'll send us a drawing and then we can go from there in the future, but, of
So,
course,
on that, also, I think, this board is very appreciative of your work and very, very proud of the fact that we've reached a level or class 2 ISO rating. I think as we look at new equipment, we also need to figure out what we would need from an equipment standpoint that would help us get to a 1.
absolutely.
And so, keep that in mind as you start to plan this out. Are there specific additional things related to the equipment? If we're going to make this investment in something right now, we don't want to invest in something that's not going to allow us the potential to achieve that rating in the future.
Absolutely. And I spoke with Mr. Franzese this morning. Our inspector has offered to come back in a couple weeks and meet with me and Mr. Franzese to, let's say we added in our next inspection will be 2026. So would we add one full-timer? What would our score have looked like? And so we can play with that system to see what will help us get maximum credit moving forward. So that'll kind of be able to help us identify that as well.
For the benefit of the board members that weren't able to be there yesterday, it is important to note that what we were told by the Commissioner of Insurance was that we scored not only a class 2, it was a high class 2. So
We missed a ISO class 1 by 2.2 points.
That's on a roughly 100-point scale. We were in the high 80s.
Yeah,
How'd
so
you get to a 1?
90 and above is 1, and we were at 87.8.
Wow.
So,
That's
yes,
good. Y'all doing that, absolutely.
absolutely. I appreciate it. Do what? Yes. Yep. I actually shined them yesterday morning and this afternoon.
Who are the 2 manufacturers that you've reached out to? Pierce and who's the other?
Sudfin and Pierce.
Okay.
Yep. And I plan to reach out to Seagrave, which was the manufacturer of our current first out engine. And then there's this couple of things, personnel. Of course, we had the ISO rating inspection or the results yesterday. I feel like I've said it, but I want to say it again. Without the support of each and every one of you, obviously I wouldn't be able to do my job efficiently, and the staff wouldn't be able to do it as well. So it's a collective effort. So I greatly appreciate your support. Coffee with the chief went this morning. Mr. Franzese and one individual showed up. But it's the first, so I'm hopeful that this will be a building block and we'll continue to improve each time.
Now, will these happen every month?
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
My plan, just so I can, and even if we did a banner or something, maybe advertise outside the fire station, is to have it the Monday or the morning before the board meeting, so the second Tuesday of each month. Kind of have it set in stone. It doesn't change month to month. I'm working with Coco Java currently to try to figure out maybe a donation thing on a monthly basis to where we're not money and, more money into it each month. And like I told them, they are our closest coffee shop and I frequent them often. So,
Well, I know Arturo, so tell him that I said that he better cut you some slack. Send you
Absolutely.
some free coffee, okay?
absolutely. And then I just wanted to make you guys aware, I did recently promote 3 individuals to the rank of captain. It was really the first time, I guess, in department history that those were all part-time individuals. But again, going back to a more of a career professional in the future mindset, selecting volunteers really wasn't an option. So I'll utilize those individuals 6 times a month during the day, and they do extra outside of that. But that is all that I have, unless you have any questions for me.
So I see here you're currently staffed with 25.
Yes, ma'am.
You have 2 part-time, you got 1 junior firefighter, and with your promotions of the Dustin Baker, Dakota Anderson, and Jason, how you say, Usuri?
Usuri? Yes, ma'am.
They were all promoted to the rank of captain. You just did that.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the stuff that keeps your people in morale. And you didn't have to take us to tell you to do it. So congratulations on that. You're a good chief.
I
like
appreciate it.
Still have any problem with staffing?
It's a hit or miss.
Good.
I think maybe one day last week I was there by myself, but those days are definitely getting fewer and far between. There's still some nighttime issues. I think last weekend I was the only one here once or twice, but those days will come. But we'll work through them. So
Well, I think you've got a good marketing tool now too.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's how you get some good advertising.
absolutely, I can tell them I'm one of 64 in the state. So
Right.
yeah, it's a pretty good feeling.
16 was number one. What,
Yep. Absolutely,
Don't string yourself out.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah, you don't want you to burn yourself out.
most definitely.
Is there like a little, public service announcement you can work with town manager to get out word about Christmas trees and danger fire?
Absolutely. And I tried to and I'll be honest, I didn't realize the fire department even had a Twitter page till last night. I guess the previous fire chief did that, and I had no clue, and finally gained access to that. But I try to be as active on our Facebook page, spreading fire safety tips. And with obviously coming into Christmas, Thanksgiving, deep frying turkeys, all that stuff will definitely be put out.
On the next newsletter,
You can
too,
put
you can
links
do some
to
input.
Fire Marshal Bill on your Twitter.
Yes.
Twitter.
Yep, and I know the newsletter, I was going to write up a little blurb about our ISO rating, how that'll affect our business owners here in town. So
But also put your little tips in on there,
Most
because
definitely.
everybody's paying attention to you now, Chief.
yes, ma'am.
And if I may add, related to the Class 2 rating, certainly want to thank our partners at the City of Salisbury with Salisbury Rowan Utilities, and also Rowan County with 911 Communications, because they play into the score as well, and did not stand in our way one bit.
No,
Of course, the
not at
fire
all.
department did a lot of the heavy lifting, but certainly appreciate the partnership there with our other organizations in the area.
And I'll just say, it's a testament to what Chief Lanning has been doing with our fire department, and also building relationships with neighboring departments. And that was just that testament to that was the folks that attended yesterday. We had folks from Salisbury Fire Department that were there. We had folks from Rowan County Emergency Services that were there as well. So you've got a lot of support, not only with this board, but within the greater Rowan County community. So keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Stay safe.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Next up is Joel Taylor with our Public Works Monthly Report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of
Good
the board.
evening.
There.
Hope everyone's doing well this evening. Glasses do not fog up. All of our regular services are running on schedule. We will be off on Thursday for Veterans Day. I want to say a happy Veterans Day to all the veterans. I know there's numerous ones on the board. So the only thing that will really be thrown off is our bulky service, and that will run on Friday. Normal trash will run Monday, through Wednesday. Bulkies will be off. Also in your board packet, I included, if anyone has any questions, that is the holiday schedule for the remainder of the year. Just so if anyone asks you or whatever, that's the actual schedule, or of course they can call me. It's no big deal. I have that in an email form, or where I can email it too. So if anybody has any questions, I can shoot that out to them in an email. It's not a problem. A great deal of time this month will be spent on, decorating for Christmas, and we began that on Monday. We've got a chance of some bad weather at the end of this week and possibly into the first of next week, so we jumped on it from the get-go. And we've got the crepe myrtles are done downtown. We're now dressing up the beds. But we've got a lot of things that's going to end up right at the very end, especially town hall. So we're not sure exactly when we're going to be able to get the building released to where we can get the lights on them. So the tentative date is the 19th, which doesn't give us much time before the parade. So we're trying to work to that and get it. I know the Nance's, I delivered the lights to them. They're going to get their stuff started probably tomorrow, if he didn't today.
Maybe. I talked to Mike today, and Mike said the roof will be clean, inspected and clean by Tuesday, and he said as early as next Wednesday you can get on.
Awesome, awesome. So that's great news. If I can have it on Wednesday, that would be even better.
Talk to him, talk to Mike.
I'll talk to Mike and find out what the latest date is on it. So, the 17th Street, just to make a note, the culverts have been finished. Cindy approved those, and the concrete has been poured, and the driveways look very nice. But those will withstand the 10-year storm. The way they are installed, the way they're put in, and they are, spec'd by her. So I just want to let everybody know that had been completed.
Tell her she can expect a 20-year storm before the 1st of December.
You're probably correct.
Murphy's Law, right?
Murphy's Law. That is
I
true.
like optimistic.
Yeah, Mr. Optimism. The bus shelter did show up. We finally did get our hands on the bus shelter. Now, the bus shelter had an issue.
It didn't have a
It never
shelter.
ends.
Misfabricated.
It was misfabricated. One of the standards that holds the post was welded to the wrong side of the line. So we shipped it back. They cut it off. They have re-welded, everything's back together again, and they delivered it to me yesterday. So I have it at the shop, so we're gonna get it assembled within all the Christmas stuff and try to get it up there before the parade, if I can do it. That's my attempt, but we'll see how kind of time allows and weather and everything else gets it going. But we do have it back. So we have set it tentatively, and it looks like everything is right now.
And despite the hassle, the customer service was great.
It was very great. He picked it up one day and had it back to me within 3 days. So everything with it has been really good. We're continuing to work with the events committee. The tree is here. It showed up yesterday. It came in. So it's still
big.
sitting on pallets.
Big.
It's big. Actually, Sam saw it in the shop yesterday. It's a lot of tree. Even on pallets, it's a lot of tree.
Yeah, it's even on pallets, it's taller than last year's tree.
Yes, it's
Are you on the natural tree this year?
No.
Oh, still the metal?
No, well, it's an outdoor artificial tree, but it's not gonna be like last year's was.
Right.
Oh, it's not the metal, it's not the metal one. Oh, okay.
Right.
It's a metal frame, but this one actually has greenery on it, so it'll
okay.
actually look like.
It looks like
And
a
I
tree,
don't
but it
wanna
doesn't smell like one.
I got you.
They have fixes for that.
There you go.
But Joe, I'll say this, if you need fluffers, this board's ready to jump in and.
Ready to jump. Okay, very good. Very good. Well, that will happen the week after Thanksgiving. Will be when that and the huts and all that stuff will be put up. So the tree is at the shop. The majority of the huts are finished and they're at the shop on the trailer, sitting there to be delivered. So everything's lining up to work out really well and have it delivered that week. We're just going to need a lot of hands on deck to make it happen, but I think we can get it done. So just to update one other thing, the project on 17th Street, and I had an update from Donald this morning. Sorry, I didn't have time to, but he has the pipe and the wires. They have been delivered, but the filter sock has still not come. So he's waiting on it, but he has been out there, had a relocate done, and he's potholed all the utilities. So as soon as that sock shows up, he's gonna be ready to go to work. I'm expecting within the next week or so, he'll be getting going on it, and it'll be taken care of. So that was the latest update I just got from him earlier today, so I wanted to make sure everything was there.
And then what about the status on the CCAP work?
On the CCAT work, I have made contact with 4 out of the 5 people. I still have one resident that has not responded. I've left them door hangers. I've done everything to try to get a phone number to contact them, and I've not received anything from them. So that's the holdup. I'm still waiting on one resident to get back in touch with me, and then we can set a meeting. I've got emails and phone numbers from everybody else ready to
Should we
go.
send Sam out there after him?
We can. That'll be fine. That will be fine. But I'm still working with the neighbors, trying to see if I can get a number from them, and neither one of them had a number for this particular neighbor. So I'm still working, if I can get them. I'm not familiar with this person. I got one from actually Craig actually provided me one number. So, I'm just waiting them to get back in touch. Like I said, I've got emails and everybody's on board to do a Zoom meeting with the engineer, and with Peter, you know, to make sure that we're all on the same page before it starts. I just need a contact with them to make sure. Now, I've been by there several
What
times, but,
property is it?
5
Okay.
Beauregard. Yes, I've got 3 in,
Oh.
I've got 3, 5 just, for some reason.
I'll talk to them.
Okay, well, if
I
you
know.
have, please have them respond or call me.
What's that? No. No.
Yeah, please have them just give me a call and get me
think
where I
that's
can
right.
get in touch with them, would be great.
Yeah. I think
And
it's
that,
Hoskins.
that'll make it, and then we can set the meeting and then we should be ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, let me look into that.
Okay, all right, very good. If you have no further questions, I'm sure we need to discuss the speed bump, but I was gonna make sure no one had any questions before.
Couple of places that there's potholes,
Okay,
intersection of Pine Spot and Oakwood,
okay,
and there's, out there at the end of, Cross Street, Bird or Hollywood.
yes, I've reported that to the DOT.
Yeah.
That one I've already reported. Yeah, around the manhole. Yes, ma'am. And 3rd. And,
If anything can be thrown in those sections that have been chewed out in the Park Plaza.
that is gonna be corrected.
Okay,
That's gonna be taken care of.
all right, good.
We spoke with I spoke with Mike earlier today, and they're gonna have some leftovers.
Okay.
We're gonna get that patched until further, developments.
All right.
That'll be handled.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And I found out earlier today, I've been trying to contact the gentleman that was my DOT contact, and he apparently has passed away with COVID. He and his wife both, so I did not know that. But now they've given me another person, so now I'm back in contact with them. I kept, and his phone would ring and it went to his voicemail, so, I just didn't know. And, Bill let me know that this morning, so, I've transitioned, basically Mike, which is the district guy, is my contact for now until they replace that position, so I'll get some more answers about that box.
Okay,
Now that everybody's on the same page, I just didn't know. I didn't bring it up, so. Any other questions?
One thing, I'm adamant about putting a speed bump in front of my house.
Okay,
And I don't take this lightly, simply because of the fact that there's been too many close calls with children. Law enforcement hasn't worked. We had this, the speed trailer or the mile per hour trailer down there several times, but this has been years ago.
okay,
The stark fact is that there are too many people speeding up and down that strip of pavement since it's been repaved. And I'm not insensitive to Ms. Sales' criticism, and also her bringing this, that there, is probably opposition. I only got the approval of the homeowners in my immediate area. So if it takes this to be placed on an agenda for a public hearing, I more than welcome it. But I see that speed bump as the only alternative to the problem.
Would it be appropriate to hold a neighborhood meeting related to it? Kind of like what we've done with this rezoning case?
Anything that would, bring this to a resolution one way or another.
Yeah, I think that would allow anybody interested in it on Sours Ferry Road would have an opportunity to.
Yeah.
And I've seen and heard residents talk about 7th Street too. There's an issue with speed on 7th Street. So, there might be something
Yes, I've
looking into
heard
it.
that as well.
So would that be my responsibility to set a neighborhood meeting, or should I go through Peter and contact, have people, maybe Sky, contact all the residents along that stretch of street?
Yeah, I think, Peter, you're gonna respond.
Yes, we
Okay.
can get that set up, and I think I don't, in terms of the immediate question of what's the process, I don't know that we have a process here of how you get a speed
I don't think
bump.
there is one.
That's another factor, is we may want to consider something so that we can answer that question. And some places that do have a process, it would likely involve a petition type of process, so that you actually have a record of everybody on the street and their take on it, in other words. So
Well, it's not so much the people that live in that area, it's the people passing through it. And short of putting spike strips out or stop sticks, I see this as an alternative that I think would work.
Yeah, Peter, I think you bring up a good point about, a petition type process that would then be a neighborhood meeting would be held related to it for folks in that general vicinity, giving them an opportunity to express their either desire or, express opposition to putting one in. And that
And it
would
doesn't
allow
have
the
to be a
board to decide.
Doesn't have to be a speed bump, it could be a speed ditch. As long as it serves its purpose.
Canyon.
Like your front yard.
Steve, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against Sam, idea is fine, but we gotta be careful about that, because there's several other areas
I know,
people have
I know, and
complained.
it's like opening
And no
Pandora's
offense,
box.
Sam, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say this in front of everybody else. And I've heard some people say this. You're on the board, you don't get no special privilege.
No, and I'm not looking at it.
And that's fine, but you need to understand that this needs to be decided democratically as best as possible.
That's
Because
why-
like I said, there's other areas that people have complained about, we need speed humps in their neighborhood. And we can't afford putting a bunch of speed humps up.
Well, and if you recall, there are a lot of complaints, and there historically have been, about the number of four-way stops we have in Spencer.
Absolutely.
We're gonna get similar complaints if we start putting speed bumps all over the place. So
Well, it could very well be that the neighborhood meeting would bring up an alternative that
Right.
would be just as good.
Right,
So-
and I think that's the key, though, is if we have neighborhoods expressing a concern over speed within those streets or neighborhoods, we need to be able to hear that. We need to be able to hear the concerns in an open forum, and then, hear what their requests or suggestions would be to remedy the problem. I think there's structural solutions, there are enforcement solutions as well, and it's a matter of what's working where. And, Sam, I know you've expressed that the other measures haven't worked. We'd love to hear from folks in your neighborhood too about, their opinions on that as well. So I would suggest that, it's been brought up as a concern. We do need to set a policy going forward. I would suggest that we look at a petition-based process. If a petition is brought before the board, that we would, then require a public meeting, a neighborhood meeting, to hear those concerns. And then the board can then act on that going forward. But again, we're not going to be able to willy-nilly approve speed bumps throughout the town.
Yeah,
But
if we
there
did
is
that, you'd have one every
Right.
100 feet,
Right.
and that's not what we want.
Well, what I can also say
Exactly.
too, and suggest to go ahead and be proactive now, well, actually reactive to Sam's concern. You stated in the past that the speed trailers that were there years ago is something they can go ahead and do now. The police chief is listening to this. And Peter, if you can go ahead and let them put a speed wagon out there also. I mean, it's something about that speed wagon being out there to alert people, whether they slow down or not, is still the attempt of doing something. Reference to this concern on both ends. Since we do know speeding is happening, they can at least do that.
I just don't want to have to run after them hollering like Gomer Powell, citizens arrest, citizens arrest.
Some of the other things that we could look into that they're effective in some places, maybe not others. Those are those actual permanent
Right.
radar devices that are solar operated, that basically flash if you're speeding. I think there are a lot of different potential solutions we could look at, what might be most effective.
Well, they definitely have a speed wagon now trailer that they can go ahead and put out there today or tomorrow. They do
Yeah.
have that.
There are some cities that have speed cameras where if you go.
Oh, Lord, I don't want to get into Big Brother, No.
I believe North Carolina, I think they did away with some of those,
Yeah,
those things.
Go over
No.
35, they target your license plate, and send you a ticket. in the
Yeah,
mail.
shoot your tires out, No, I don't want that.
And if it's over 10 miles an hour in the school zone, they send a ticket in the mail, so. I don't think we wanna get to that point, but.
I was gonna say, I've got a certain family member, and we might be in trouble.
But I appreciate it.
And it's
and,
not me.
I look forward to the meeting.
Great.
To get it and get everybody's
Well, and
input.
thank you for bringing, I mean, it's a concern, so thank you for bringing it before us, and, we thank Ms. Sells too for expressing the fact that other neighbors want to have an input into it as well. Okay, anything else for Joel? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, next is our Finance Department report. And we'll invite Ms. Wilson forward.
There's the quitter.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Just to update you on some of the projects that, is going on. We did, get the purchase order module up and running. A lot of the department leaders are already using it, and it seems to be working very well. So that's a positive thing. The analytics module, Southern Software, still working on that for us. They are inputting employee information and how we do our budgeting and things like that. So they're still working on that for us. And then with Clockwise, they have had to build another site for the police department to accommodate the 28-day cycle. So that's taken some time, but they are actively working on it. I talked to them last week. And seems like revenue seem to be coming in good. Expenses we're maintaining those real well. And we're just rolling right along into this year. Does anyone have any questions for me or anything?
I do. In general fund, on the first page, if you go down to line item 10-3438000, Rowan Salisbury Schools, and it has that amount. Is that something that we're getting from Rowan or we're giving to Rowan?
No, that's for the resource officers.
That's correct. They sent us a check for the
that's
resource officers this year.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So the amount that's showing over there used for the percentage, it says 100%. That's not saying that it's been used, right?
Correct. They went ahead and paid us for the full year, so that's what they sent us for this year, and we budgeted that in with the salaries for the police department. We knew because we had to fill out a report to send to them to let them know, how much the salaries were going to be, and so this is like a reimbursement type.
So this
They
page,
have-
These aren't used, that used percentage that you see, any of the revenue reports that we have, that percentage is how much of what we had budgeted we've received in revenue. So we've received everything that we budgeted.
Yes.
Okay, and you said that that amount is already incorporated in with the police?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
good enough. Thank you, Jonathan. Even though I was asking for a favor. Got
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Anytime.
I mean,
Happy to-
you know,
happy to butt in
easily-
and answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Faith, I want to say thank you for
We're
all
gonna
that
miss
you
you.
have
Oh,
done.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you in your next
you.
endeavor. We're certainly going to miss you, and you've done a lot to bring new technology and update processes and everything
you're-
like
you're
that. So
welcome.
we are very, very appreciative of you for that.
Looking forward to
We
being
wish
a
you the
little
best.
closer to home.
We completely
Thank you.
understand.
Thank you.
So thank you. All right. Next item is our library report.
Good afternoon, Mayor and board members.
Good afternoon or evening.
Yeah, evening.
Good night, I guess.
Two school groups from SC Academy and North Rowan Middle School had attended the Life Pathway event sponsored by Spencer Public Library. Beverly has been experimenting with Canva, and she has increased the Facebook followers by 27 followers as of October 19th, and there was about 103 in the door count. Do you guys have any questions?
So can you clarify, I know Ms. Talbot had a question related to the computer.
Yes.
That's there. I think my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that is there for those in our community that maybe don't have personal internet service in their homes, that they can come and actually have internet service at the library.
The library does have Wi-Fi for anyone that does come in with their own devices. There's also, there seemed to be a need. Someone was there when I was there, and they come in wanting to apply for a job, and all they had was a cell phone. Well, Beverly doesn't allow for you to use her personal computer. If you needed something printed, you could request and she'd print it out for you. Well, the whole purpose of the computer being there is to allow for that opportunity for someone that may need to use a computer or to print anything out. So we wanted to allow that for the residents to have as a feature.
Very good. And my understanding is the printing, there's still a cost to.
From my understanding, there is a printing associated with it, and it was approved in the budget.
Yeah, so
I think it's 25
per fee
cents
schedule.
the page or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have to say too, because I was here on the previous, and that computer should have been there even on the previous board, because she requested for that, for not only for job hunters, but for kids who can't afford to have computers, or just for research purposes. It was easier to have that computer there, and that's why we had granted her that computer back then.
And she did make the request for a computer there.
Mm-hmm.
We budgeted for it.
The money had come out of the book.
No.
No, there is a different budget line that did allow for the computer purchase. It was not for books. Is there any other questions?
All right. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along, we'll move to our town manager report. Mr. Franzese.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Just a few highlights for you. In October, our town staff met with our consultants we're working with to scope our project for the future Greenway, known as 3rd Street Greenway. And of course, to remind folks that aren't familiar, several years ago, NCDOT agreed to provide the town about $3.5 million towards constructing a proposed Greenway along 3rd Street and up Salisbury Avenue to the Wilcox Bridge. And at the time, the original project estimate was about $4.5 million, leaving the town with about $900,000 to come up with. And the town has yet to enter in a municipal agreement with NCDOT, which is what we need to do to proceed with the project. And so in order to do that, we need to make sure the cost of the project is correct. And so the work with the consultants will provide an updated cost estimate for the project, as well as identifying other costs like right-of-way engineering that could be programmed into the municipal agreement with NCDOT. We're also going to ask them to provide an analysis of design alternatives for pavement markings on Salisbury Avenue in coordination with NCDOT's. And that could include strategies and planned facilities to help make sure we are managing events in town the right way. And hopefully that will all dovetail together into the Greenway concept for the alignment along Salisbury Avenue. In terms of our new town hall and police department, things are really getting into the short rows of finishes and landscaping, and it's really starting to come together here in the final weeks. Of course, we did talk last week about the natural gas generator. The good news I heard this week about the natural gas generator is it actually seems like it will likely be here in the spring time frame, not necessarily, this time next year. What the last I heard was they do anticipate production on it to start in February, March, and hopefully get here April, May timeframe. So that's what we're aiming for with that. And the contractor has even worked with the county where it seems like we don't necessarily have to get into a temporary CO status. They will be able to get all the approvals and inspections and keep that generator separate for a separate inspection and finalize everything else. We've talked a little bit about Winterfest. Want everybody to make sure that the organizers of Winterfest have been great in making sure that we can kick off that event with an open house for the new building. And that is being planned for Friday, December 3rd, 3 to 6 p.m. And we're coordinating with the Winterfest committee, hoping to put together a special tour for some invited guests prior to the ceremony starting. Have a ribbon cutting at 3 o'clock, and then open the doors and invite the public in 3 to 6 to meet staff and tour the building and meet officials. And so we're excited about that. And we look to have the December Board of Alderman meetings in the new buildings. And of course, the Winterfest will be going on. And after we get through all of that, we'll be looking to have our office move take place the last few weeks of December, hopefully. So that's the time frame we're working on in terms of that. We're also looking to transition to a single email system for the town. We currently have 2 different systems, and we think we're on track to get that launched in late December, where our new SpencerNC.gov domain that our website is on will also be where you can reach us by email. And seems like I've been talking about our federal local physical recovery funds, the ARPA funds, as some know. For several months, of course, we've done several things to get set up and get ready for that. That's going to be about $1 million for the town to determine how to spend. There's been a lot of information to come from that, and that's been very good. And one of the things that happened over the last month was a 6-day course by the School of Government and a lot of other partners that was provided at no cost to local governments. And it covered a range of topics to include a lot of things on compliance and reporting. I would say the layers of compliance requirements associated with this funding is quite staggering. It's a lot involved, and there was a very strong encouragement for small units like ours to work with partners like the COGS, who have a lot of experience in administering these kinds of funds and can assist us, especially in the realm of compliance and reporting. We've had a few meetings with the staff at Centralina regarding to that, and I've asked them for proposals on what it would look like for them to assist us to help us administer the funds over the next 5 years. And there's a range of services that they make that available. There's some detail on that in your packet, but more to come on that. But that's currently where we are. And one of the things that when we were talking was the idea of kicking this off with a conversation with the community about not necessarily asking the question, how do you want us to spend the money? Because that'll give us a very long list of things that people would like. But ask a question a different way of, what was the impact of the pandemic on you? And that might help us identify some needs that this funding could go towards. And so we'll continue that process, and I'll certainly keep you up to date. Be happy to answer any questions.
So on the last part, in regards to what you said about Centralina helping us to administer the fund, I mean, basically, the course more or less gives all the categories for which these dollars can be used.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond that, why would we need Centralina to help us to disperse these dollars once we know what's eligible and what's not eligible?
because there's a lot of administrative requirements for compliance and reporting on both the federal and state levels, that it appears that is our in-house capacity to manage that process is very limited, and they're well suited to assist us, not just on the initial public engagement opportunities that we think are important, but also the ongoing just administration of the funds. And that was, again, a very strong recommendation coming out of the training, is that, you know, local units like small units like ours would be well suited to consider that. So we're getting some information, and it also opens the opportunity for collaboration, and that the COG can, I think, help us if there's opportunities to collaborate with other local governments in some of these projects or needs. You know, I think that's a good way to facilitate that as well.
So some of the services that they could provide, obviously at a cost, would be things like facilitating the public engagement sessions, actually handling all the paperwork and submittals and everything like that to the federal government as part of that?
Yes, there are compliance and reporting. There's quarterly reports and ongoing administrative processes. And there's a portion, one of the allowable uses of the funds, of course, is for administration of the funds. And so that.
That was going to be my next question. So all of those administrative fees and so forth could be paid out of the rest.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions?
Something that I, sorry.
Go ahead.
Have you contacted the Chamber of Commerce about ribbon cutting? We should consider asking them.
Certainly, yeah. We're definitely want to work with them on that. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
Have you contacted, last meeting we said something about setting up a timetable about this federal housing grant that we had from the government, $600,000. Is there any timetable? Because I had somebody ask me about that.
Yeah, thank you. We still haven't heard back from them, and I recall I've asked some staff about it, and but we'll ask again and let you know.
Okay.
I also think it might behoove us to, as aldermen, to contact our both state and federal representatives to encourage them to talk with staff at state level to make sure that those funds are, you know, promptly.
Yeah, it feels like they're kind of dragging their feet on that issue.
Yeah.
I
So,
will say that I met with, had a conversation with Terry Warren, over the election period of time where I was out at the polls, and he told me to be sure to give anybody who's doing grant writing his information, because he'd be happy to help work with us and help us identify any grants that might be available.
Okay.
And all that. I gave him brief about some things that he wasn't doing, but, you know.
No, that's you.
That was the
I thought you were on this
conversation.
Well, I mean.
How long did that last?
It went till dark.
Well, no, I mean, he had to go to Raleigh.
okay. Peter, one question on the website. I know I had mentioned about the old website.
Sorry.
It's not just automatically defaulting to the new website. It still shows that under construction, or did you reach out to Miller Davis about that?
I did, and actually, have you experienced that recently?
I haven't checked it since I mentioned it to you.
It's been resolved. There was apparently Memory Bank wound up helping us. There was some DNS issues in the background, and I can't explain it better than that, but it's been resolved.
Okay.
Best I can tell.
Okay, thank you. All right, very good. Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, and that is attachment 7, that is Budget Ordinance 21-021. And this is a budget ordinance to amend our budget for a donation received from the Foundation for the Carolinas, and it's the Fred Standback Donor Advised Fund for the downtown park. And so with that, this ordinance pertains to the fact that we have received a $100,000 gift from Mr. Stanback to kickstart our.
Is it 1,000 or
I'm sorry,
100?
100,000. Did I say 1,000? 100,000. Thank you. $100,000 gift to kickstart our plans for the downtown park and Park Plaza. And so we're super excited about this. Kind of view that as a lead gift to kickstart what we hope to be a giving campaign throughout the county and beyond for folks that have a connection to Spencer and are interested in seeing this park come to fruition. So with that, this basically this accepts the $100,000 into our miscellaneous revenues budget, and then subsequently transfers to a downtown park project line item, that's $100,000 into that project account.
Flip to the next.
That's what that's what I was like, is he saying 1,000 or 100? Oh, you
Thank
skipped. You skipped the next. Okay.
All right. So is there a motion to approve this particular budget?
So moved.
All right, motion by Mr. Morgan,
Second.
second by Mr. Bish. All in favor? All right, opposed? All right, that is approved. And so then budget ordinance 21-022 is to actually establish the project fund for the downtown park project that allows then that $100,000 transfer from the general fund into this new special project fund for the downtown park. Is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Morgan, second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right, all opposed? Very good.
Can I say something? Do we acknowledge that, with a thank you note to the Stanbacks
Yeah.
for this thing?
Yes, we do. What I try and do, and I have not done this yet, but we'll be doing that, is I actually have email dialogue with Mr. Stanback, but I've been sending, in
Good.
addition to
Good.
Mr. Smith and other donors that have provided money for the parks.
I figured you were, but I just want to make sure it's official.
Absolutely. Yep.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is resolution 21-026, and this is a interlocal mutual aid assistance. This is attachment 10 in your agenda item, and this is a resolution that would authorize the town manager to execute an interlocal undertaking agreement with Rowan County regarding mutual assistance of law enforcement services. With that, Mr. Franzese, I will turn it over to you for presentation to the board.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As you know, we do have some vacancies in our police department, and we're recommending this for you because staffing is at a level where mutual assistance to cover shifts would be very beneficial for the staff we have left. Rowan County Sheriff's Office is willing to provide that assistance on a temporary basis. And again, the goal is to cover our shifts as needed so that our existing officers are not stretched too thin. This is concept here is something temporary for up to 6 months on a as needed basis. We would have to carefully manage, the balance of allowing our existing officers to work extra and overtime if they wish, versus getting them overworked and giving them their time off they need to be fresh when they are working. And we also have to carefully consider how our existing staff are deployed to make the best use of the resources we do have. And so that's all the part of how this would get implemented, that we'll work very carefully with our police staff and the sheriff's staff in carrying it out. But I would say the county has been very helpful in this and structuring this in a way that does incentivize their staff to sign up to help us, and at a cost that is reasonable for the town of Spencer. The cost of $50 for each hour of service is the full cost of what we pay to the county to cover not just the officer's time, but also the vehicles, equipment, fuel, training, the full cost of their service. And on another note, just to acknowledge the timing, as you're considering this, the Rowan County Board of Commissioners did already consider and approve this. We did not anticipate that was going to happen. The thought was that they would do that next week, but the county was able to get it onto a sooner agenda with the thought that if they did that and this board, it was the pleasure of this board to also approve an agreement, it would allow us to implement it sooner. And so certainly appreciate their working with us on that. But it certainly would have been ideal to have Spencer Board of Aldermen consider this first. But I do appreciate that, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, we'll open it up to the board for questions.
Would we be in charge, or is our police chief in charge of scheduling these new officers coming in from the county?
So my understanding is we would go through our process of scheduling our staff, identify what openings would remain needed, and then provide those to the county, who would then handle getting their staff signed up. But there would be very close communication in between.
Okay. Now, we have the option that if our officers want to work overtime, they can do that. Is that what you just said, or is that correct?
Yes, and just to make sure everybody understands how our overtime works, every year in the budget process, departments are to determine, for the coming year, whether overtime is paid through wages at a time and a half rate or through comp time at a time and a half rate. At the time of our budget, of putting our budget together, the desire from the police department was to continue the use of comp time. So there was not an overtime budget for police. A few months back, as our staffing picture started to change, there was a request for police if we could establish some overtime budget in order to allow officers who covered extra shifts to get paid overtime. And the personnel policy has set up that exception can be made. And so we established a temporary exception to that while we're understaffed to allow officers to work overtime. And we did a budget transfer using unpaid salaries to establish a small overtime budget. And so that's currently where we are with that, but it's not, really the long-term structure that we have.
Sure, I understand.
So one question related to the agreement here, obviously with $50 per hour. Have you tried to forecast what we think the overall financial impact of the police department is within that 6-month period? I mean, my goal is that obviously it's more than if we were doing this in-house, but yet they are providing things like their training, providing things like their vehicle use with their gas. So do we have a kind of a magnitude of what the financial impact is? Are we going to be able to stay within our allotted police department budget, considering that we are not paying some salaries for folks that have left the organization?
Yes, we have forecasted that out, and we think what we can do is establish, based on the shifts that we think we need covered for the upcoming month, we can establish through a budget transfer from lapsed salary, this cost that we can move it to contract services and make that available on kind of a month-to-month decision. But we do believe, yes, the cost of this would be fully covered through what we have available.
And then what other measures are we taking upon ourselves to recruit and try to reach out to basically to bring our own staff on board to address the staffing shortage?
Yes, so that work continues. We've had our continuous posting up, but we have to redouble our efforts. We're getting through this phase and this process, and then focus very quickly on on redoubling our efforts to reach out and enhance our staff to the level it needs to be.
All right, are there other questions from the board at this time?
So you're saying you would waiting to get through this process first before you start establishing norms as far as hiring and bringing on officers?
Not about or the norms are established, but we have to do more, I'd say, to make sure that we increase the amount of applications that are coming in. They have not been coming in strongly in over the last few months, and that's what we have to focus on next is how we make sure to improve that.
Okay, so what ideas do you have on how that's going to happen?
I think there's a range of ideas. One is we want to certainly let the law enforcement community around the area know that we are looking to hire, and we're a special place to work here. This is a great organization. But one of the other ideas that's out there is we worked with PTRC, Piedmont Triad Regional Council, previously, and they've assisted us with some job searches. I'm awaiting some information from them that they can help set up a application portal for us, similar to how they have, that would push our job ads better out there into some of the online Indeed and some of those online job search platforms. I think that would really enhance our reach, and so I'm waiting on some information from them on what that looks like for them to assist us with that process.
So was the county the only available entity that would offer the same type of service to assist Spencer through this period of low staffing?
Yes, due to jurisdictional issues, of course, we have mutual aid agreements with lots of law enforcement organizations, but those are for specific incidents that may occur. But for this ongoing issue of needing to cover shifts in general, the county has the jurisdiction. And this is based on a model that worked very well with them 5 years ago, where they assisted the city of Salisbury.
So you came up with this idea, Peter, reference to the model from Salisbury?
I don't know that I'd characterize that I came up with the idea, but
Well, I mean, we're just now learning about it. I mean, the media knew about it before we did. I'm just wanting to know who came up with the idea, and then how did you come about with this idea and in this whole plan? Because for some odd reason, the community and the media seem to believe that we came up with it and we didn't. Somehow or another, it formulated, and here's back in our lap. So,
sure.
I mean,
And
here we are today.
And of course, I've kept the board up to date to the
No,
best of my ability along the way.
no, I wouldn't be saying what I'm saying right now. So how did you come up with this? How did we come about this thing? I mean, with the county, and now we have to come
Sure.
in behind
Yeah.
the county.
So, the initial conversation was between the police chief and me, and at that point, there was a conversation between our police department and the sheriff's office. And at that point, the sheriff's office said they were glad to assist us, but we needed to work between me and the county manager. And at that point, I reached out. They provided the information from the last time they did this with Salisbury, and as soon as we had it available for your consideration, we put it on your agenda. And but that's where the idea came from, was knowing that the county did provide this about 5 years ago to
I
assist.
just wanted it for the record that there's keep being these quotes reference to our knowledge and us knowing and waiting on us to come with a decision, but we're going to decide after the decisions were already made for us. I just wanted to know how this, and why we got all these questions for you. And you just answered it, reference to you and the police chief came up with this idea, so, okay.
And of course, that's our role as staff, is to provide recommendations to you for your consideration.
there's a lot of community monies going out here, and I just needed, for the record, for them to know why the community, we're gonna, as the paper already said, we're gonna look out for the community to make sure what's best for the community at this point, and it's their safety and officer safety. Just wanted to know whose idea it was, because it wasn't ours. It's not a bad idea, it's just how it came about and how do we get to be on the back end of the bus.
Ms. Sledge?
The one question that I have is how flexible and how responsive will this be? I mean, you talk about filling in shifts, but if you have somebody who's scheduled and can't come for one reason or another.
Sure.
Are you gonna be able to call and say, hey, I gotta have somebody and I need them today? I mean, you know, I know scheduling is one thing, but is there a provision for emergency staffing if you need it?
And, that's a good question. I don't have the answer because we haven't gotten that far into the details yet. Pending the authorization of the concept, those are all the kinds of details and logistics that would get worked out between the departments.
Yeah, I think that's critical to make sure that, we're gonna get the same level of response as if they were our own staff.
So I want to get back to this thing about jurisdiction. We do have interlocal agreements with like East Spencer, Salisbury, or even the county for backup. And at the time that they are employed in Spencer, they have jurisdiction to do what they have to do, correct? So why wouldn't they have, why would we have to have an exclusive contract with the county? I mean, could there ever be a situation where the county would not have enough officers to cover our need to have a particular person at the time, and then we would be left without having an additional person to come over to provide police services from either Salisbury or East Spencer or any other police jurisdiction around? I mean, when you need help, you need help. And I think if they're sworn officers, it would seem to me that they would have jurisdiction once we employ them to work in Spencer, no?
Well, we're not going to employ the officers directly.
No, we're contract.
Yeah.
It's basically, in no offense, it's like a rent-a-cop situation type of thing, right? So we would have rent-a-cops for whatever particular time that we need them, and we wind up paying them $50 and paying their superior, their force, $50 an hour for them to provide police services when we need it, right? So why would we restrict ourselves to only county? That's what I want to understand.
Because, again, the question over jurisdiction relates to, if we had a specific incident here and we had to execute on a mutual aid, for example, with East Spencer related to a specific incident that was happening, that is for a very specific purpose.
Okay.
This is more general, ongoing, not around any specific incident.
Right.
And so the county has jurisdiction to provide law enforcement services everywhere in the county, including in Spencer. They also are a very large organization that has the capacity to administratively handle this and the staff to handle this. We've received no indication of concerns from the county on an inability to meet the need, and that I think that was the first question: is this even feasible? There was no concerns from them that they thought this was going to be a problem for their own staff. So
the bottom line, other than the county, you're saying any other police force in the area, in the region, would not be allowed to operate in the town of Spencer?
I think for general purpose, I
I do not have any indication that is an arrangement that, unless we were to declare, some sort of special event that was gonna go on for the next few months. And, it's just a different concept of that type of mutual aid with another law enforcement agency that does not already have the jurisdiction here.
Yeah, my understanding, and Chief Ovis, correct me if I'm wrong, the mutual aid that we have with partnering agencies like Salisbury, East Spencer, that is incident specific. So if our staff need to call for backup, they can call in one of those neighboring agencies, and what they're gonna do, staff that they already have on duty will then respond based on that mutual aid agreement.
That I
This,
understand.
right,
And they're doing
this,
that,
this
and
is
they're
a
not
mutual
charged
aid.
enough to do that.
Correct, but
Okay.
it's incident specific.
Okay.
This is where we have a lack of an officer and we need an additional entire shift covered. That would be then falling under this. And the reality is East Spencer's not going to necessarily have the resources to send in another officer
Well,
for
we don't know that.
a complete
But
shift.
do you know that for sure?
Salisbury it's the fact of the matter is the sheriff's department is the largest law enforcement organization in the county. They have the resources to cover it. They've used this model before. I mean, the fact that they have backed up Salisbury, which is the second largest law enforcement organization in the county, I think speaks to the fact that they are set up to be able to handle this. Now, the reality is, could we use other organizations? Potentially. But that would be our town doing a disservice to our neighboring organizations to further burden them. They've got enough on their hands to work with as it is.
Okay, after you say could, what was the bottom line? What would that be? The answer would be they could or they couldn't. What you said,
So
could East Spencer, could Salisbury provide services to Spencer?
they could, but
They could or they couldn't?
They could, but at the end of the day, the county is the leading agency over all us municipalities. And they are staffed to be able to pretty much assist. But also, the municipality, Spencer is in Rowan County, just like East Spencer is in Rowan County, Salisbury is in Rowan County. My only question reference, and I'm hoping I'm answering that question for you, Bob, but my question back to Peter is, which Ms. Sledge said it perfectly. For me, I'm if we need the help, then we need the help, obviously. But my question is the logistics of it, is the accountability and the services that will be provided. Because once again, Jonathan nailed it too just now the mayor just nailed it too by saying we're burdening our county with our problem. And our problem came somehow or another, not from this board. And I just want it to be a problem that can be fixed, however you recruit it, however you do it, but make sure that whenever these deputies, as you go on these poor Spencer officers, keep in mind with the poor county that's got to come in and help us. And let's not use them up too, just because they're available. I would rather have them and know that we're not taking advantage of a good situation when we actually have the resources here to use. Now, I offer the suggestion about the Rowan County schools, such as North Rowan High and North Rowan Middle, which is Rowan County schools, and let the resource officers, the 2 resource officers temporarily come out and be regular Spencer officers, seeing how that $120,000 that they're paying us or that's gotten into our salaries somehow reflect back to them, and they can use their deputies into the schools, and that way it'll be a consistency of 7:30 to 3:30, and they don't have to worry about working holidays or weekends, and then you got that consistency of that, and have our Spencer officers out here working until we staff up. Because once you get those 2 deputies, those 2 officers out here, and you got 2 deputies in there, you've got 10 officers that's supplied for this small town. You don't need no more than that. You got more than enough. I'm saying, think about that idea, because if Rowan County Schools is paying us, then why don't we use what we have already and put the deputies there? That way you don't have to worry about overtime. Besides, we got 4 holidays coming up on us. That's extra money too. So
I
it's
think
just
we
food
need
for
to-
thought.
Yeah, I think we need to be creative in how I view this as a tool in our toolkit, right? You've got some good suggestions, Ms. Hovis, for our existing staff and how we use them most effectively. So I think by having this tool in our toolkit, it allows us to do some things obviously differently than we have been. I think the reality is, do we like that we're in this situation and that we have to rely on the sheriff's department? No. Are we thankful that the sheriff's department is an organization that we can rely on? Absolutely. And I think our goal would be that if we're using this agreement, our goal as an organization is to get out of it as quickly as we can so that we don't need it. If we can get to a point that we don't need it, then we've been successful in rebuilding our staff and bringing our numbers up from what we've lost. So with that, I think it's important that we make this step and move forward. And I think that's kind of the path before us, is we've got to move forward. And in order to do that, we've got to get the right staff in place for Spencer. So it's got to be a strategy where we address our issues right now, but then we heavily recruit for new staff for Spencer. So, I would encourage our board to offer suggestions. Peter and Stacy, as y'all and our police look to recruit. Let us know what we can do to help as a part of that process, because we need to be out beating the bushes. We need to be out at colleges, and the reality is just posting social media and posting job applications is not that's one tool, right, for the recruiting process. We've got to be out there in front of people, and we've got to be telling our story and why it's a great place to come and work. So let us know how we can help. With that, are there other questions related to this agreement? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the agreement?
So moved.
It's a motion by Mr. Morgan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? All in favor? Right? All opposed? That is approved. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is to consider setting a public hearing for conditional rezoning. With that, Mr. Harris is back.
Hello again. So we did talk a little bit about this during my departmental report, but just to summarize very quickly, of course, on December 14th, provided that y'all set the date for the legislative hearing at that time, y'all will be considering making a final decision on whether to approve or deny the conditional rezoning of that property at 200 South Salisbury Avenue. And again, that's from C29 commercial to the VSR vehicle service and repair. So this item is largely a formality. What you're being asked to consider tonight is a resolution to fix the date of the legislative hearing at that time. The reason there was, well, what I would say is the planning board met last night, and the result of that meeting being so close to the date of this meeting, obviously it was too close for us to set the legislative hearing for today. And so setting it for December 14th allows us to meet our obligations for publishing the notice in the Salisbury Post for 2 consecutive calendar weeks, as well as sending certified mail to by first class to all adjacent property owners, as well as posting a sign prominently on the property to notify any other individuals who may wish to speak at that hearing. And so, quite simply, this item is to set the date of the legislative hearing on December 14th.
So Kyle, I've got a question for you on that. Obviously, we've talked about some of the ongoing issues on the property that I think collectively we'd like to see resolved one way or the other. So with that being the case, if we hold that legislative hearing on December the 14th, would you at that same meeting be proposing to then put an action for considering the rezoning at the December 14th meeting?
Yes, if the legislative hearing is held at that time, you could make a decision as early as that evening on whether to approve it or deny it. If you feel that additional information brought up at the legislative hearing warrants continuing the case or tabling a decision until January or another time, it's certainly within your prerogative to do that. December 14th would be the earliest date that you could make a decision, because the final statutory hurdle is having that legislative hearing.
So wouldn't it be more appropriate if we hold that on the Thursday pre-agenda meeting? That would then give our board time to reflect on the input that we have received from that public hearing before we make a decision on that rezoning. So we would have the hearing then, the pre-agenda Thursday before the 14th. I'm not sure what date that is. And then we could actually consider the rezoning action on that, on the meeting on the 14th.
I believe it would be the 9th.
So December the 9th. Are we able to meet all of the requirements for notifications if we hold that then?
Yes, it's still well in advance. We can still make that work.
Do you see any challenges with that or any downside to doing that?
No, I don't see any. In fact, the idea didn't occur to me until you brought it up. So I think it is a good idea to hold it before December 14th. And so you can take that time to evaluate any of the feedback we get. And still, December 14th could be the earliest that you could make a final decision. You could still table it after that if you feel even additional time is necessary.
All right. So what does the board think of that, doing the hearing on the 9th?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. All right.
Instead of the 14th.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that will be critical there is that we do make sure that our incoming board members are present, that they can also hear that, since they will actually take up this item at the December 14th meeting. Right? So we'll need to make sure that they are present, can hear the input.
I will say that I was contacted by someone who lives within, I believe, 2 blocks of the building in question, and they didn't know anything about the neighborhood meeting. So I don't know how far out your outreach goes.
So the only requirement is that I had to contact all abutting property owners. But knowing that that would only cover a very small amount of the neighbors that may be impacted, I widened it to a very broad area. Now, 2 blocks away may have been outside of my mailing. I couldn't get the entire area. I had to put a cutoff at some point. So if they're interested, you can certainly direct them towards me, and I can evaluate, them submitting additional comments. And
Wow, that was about 40. What was that? Would you mail out 40 notices?
Yeah, I mailed out 40 notices of the neighborhood meeting.
I think the other key is if you have residents that express, to any of the board members for that matter, just remind them of the opportunity at the public hearing to come and speak. That's important as well. Okay.
And the sign that's required to be posted on the property will be obviously generally visible. So anyone who regularly passes by can stop, take a look, and if they're interested, it will have the time, date, and place of that legislative hearing.
All right, very good. All right, so is the board in general agreement with the 9th? If so, I'll take a motion to set the hearing for December the 9th.
Make a motion, we do.
All right, it's a motion by Mr. Miller. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right, opposed? All right, the hearing is set for December the 9th at our pre-agenda meeting. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, thank you.
All right, and Mr. Morris, at long last, you have waited patiently. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Wonderful to see you.
All right, the next item is considering authorizing the town manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with Alfred Benesh and Company for the Yadkin River Trailhead for design and Construction Administration Services. It's attachment 14 in your agenda.
So a question that the board might have would be, why are we doing this? And the reason is, when we started the project of the Yadkin River Trailhead, it was actually a series of incremental projects with small design fees, well less than the threshold of $50,000, which kicks in what is called the Mini Brooks Act, which is a state law that requires governmental units, when they have design fees that meet or exceed $50,000, there needs to be a process where other designers have an opportunity to submit their qualifications for consideration for design services. And as I mentioned, we had been doing essentially a series of small design projects, a few $1,000s at a time, using contributed money, primarily from the Wilson Smith Foundation, or Friends of Rowan, actually, and a small grant from the Robertson Foundation. And so we were sort of proceeding along, and lo and behold, we had a $250,000 contribution that was given to us just 2 months ago. And so that changed everything. It allowed us to accelerate, the ambition of building this trailhead and getting it done. And it builds in some efficiencies in proceeding by doing it all at one time, having one contract management, one contractor, all of the above. That sort of expanded the scope of the project beyond the Mini Brooks Act threshold. And so trying to stay in tune with good governance, town manager suggested that we proceed with some requests for qualifications. We posted that on our website. In this particular case, we received only one, it's not really a bid, but a submittal of qualification, and that happened to be from Alfred Benish, the company we've been working with. And so we were leaning very heavily on expertise, familiarity with our project, and familiarity with the project in Davidson County, and also the ability to assist with future grants for this particular project as they might be needed. And so I can say, tell the board with full confidence that Jeff Ashbaugh, who is our primary contact with Alfred Benish, is fully qualified to lead the team to design this project, to manage bidding and construction going forward. And they provided, and I believe Peter sent out to you the package that they submitted to us that addressed every single item that we mentioned in our request for qualifications. And so the staff recommendation is that the board consider authorizing the town manager to execute the contract with an agreement with Alfred Benish to do the design and construction management work for this project. And so I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you might have in this regard.
I will add to what Joe said with Benesh and company and Jeff Ashball. It's important to note too that is the same company and same project manager that has led all the work on the Davidson County side of the Yadkin River Park. So with them being on board provides us consistency in look and amenities and things like that to really tie our side of the river into the greater Yadkin River Park.
Well, and they've also worked with the standback forest.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So we do have a good prior working relationship with them.
Correct.
Have we, you put in some applications for some grants. Have you heard anything about that?
So a very good question. Mr. Miller is asking about our grant applications. The committee for the recreational trail program grants will convene on November 12th. It's this week, right? And then, the other grant application that we had in, was with the Carolina Thread Trail, and they had initially proposed the idea of having some interviews with, the localities that had applied, and they basically said they were gonna wait until mid-November before they reached out to us to get additional information. And so the timing is that, I rather suspect that the next time, I meet with this board, I'll be able to, or in advance of that, be able to inform you as to the status of those particular applications. So, as far as we know, we have submitted everything that they asked for, and we're hopeful that will be funded.
Mr. Morris, you want to rephrase that? The next time you talk to us, you will have good news for us?
You know, I would like to say that, but I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Come on, Joe, now you do better than that.
I feel good about our application. I think we're very, as you might imagine, now is a very competitive time, and so, but I feel like our project is a good one.
Good. Thank you.
Are there other questions related to entering into an agreement with Vanessa and Company? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion we approve it, please.
I got a motion. We'll give it to Mr. Miller, and we'll give the second to Mayor Pro Tem. Any
You can have
further
it.
discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed?
Thank you
That
very
is
much.
approved. Mr. Morris, thank you for all your continued work on this. We're looking forward to great things. I think, what did we say? We're going to start construction in February? Hopefully?
I mean, realistically, if we take into account the bid process and getting someone lined up and mobilization and that sort of thing, I think March is very doable. I do, so.
What,
No, not my tractor and mower down there, but,
one thing, Joe, from what I've heard, presented in the, over the months, and the talks that you've had with the, current owners of the property, it seems like more than likely, there's going to be manufacturing in that area, rather than residential or, anything else. And I would hate that, what we do on this side of the river butts up right against some kind of manufacturing plant.
right.
Is there still ongoing talks, people trying to, and I know it's not our property, but are there any conversations with Donald Rand and the other owner about the importance of that area and the fact that, we'd like to maintain at least as much natural area as we possibly can?
Right. So, the short answer is, I'm not in contact with, I think it's Waterford, is the name of their company.
Yeah.
But I know that the site selection, process that Duke Energy reported on at the last meeting, sort of described multiple scenarios for that site, and then they put together the marketing for it, and we had an opportunity to talk with the designers who were putting that report together, and we expressed our interest in some sort of a multi-use facility. The thing that is, I guess, attractive about this site is that it's two separate parcels, one to the south and east of the railroad, and then the one out on the river, which is to the north and west of the railroad. And so there can be complementary development strategies, where manufacturing could be closer to the interstate and that sort of thing. We have some opportunities for negotiation with the developers of the site based on their need for transportation infrastructure there. And so.
And sewer infrastructure.
Yes. And sewer infrastructure as well. So we've got some talking to do.
And let me add to that, because, you know, I've been a strong advocate for the fact that we really view there's one side of Highway 29 because of some adjacent parcels that really lends itself more to that manufacturing industrial area. Everyone that I've talked to, including the folks that have been with the Duke Energy Site Readiness Program, the designers with Withers and Ravenel, even when we've talked with the owners of the property, and the EDC, they can all see that vision that we've talked about of more mixed use, retail, residential, entertainment sort of stuff on that parcel where the actual finishing company building was. And I think that aligns much more closely with the general Yadkin River Park idea and our trailhead and bikeway Greenway into town. So I think people see that vision. We're going to continue to push to make that a reality. But I do think the area on the other side, on the east side of Highway 29, is much more conducive to that type of manufacturing industrial use. And that's really, I think, where the EDC is steering some potential investors that are interested. And I believe, and I may be speaking for them, but the owners of the current finishing company site, you know, I think their goal right now is to find a way to offload that property for development. And so I think, you know, if they have somebody that comes in that's interested in the site across on the east side of Highway 29 for manufacturing, they would probably be ready to move on that. Our goal, what we need to continue to do, is work with folks like the Chamber and the EDC. Again, the EDC is more focused on manufacturing and industry and job creation. But working with folks like the Chamber and other folks that can see that vision for that mixed use development on that, 50 or 70 acre parcel is going to be very, very important. So just know that I'm continuing to advocate for that. And I know that we have others that are as well.
You know, and that's probably something that I know. And before you know it, it's going to be time for our annual goal setting retreat. I mean, that's going to be on us here in just a few weeks. And maybe it would be a good opportunity to have a little bit of focus on the various partners that affect not only this site, but also the Fisher Lamb site, which is in desperate need of a transportation infrastructure enhancement in order to work. And so that may be something that this board would like to take up as a a major emphasis going into the next year, because if we solve that problem, it's going to affect our tax base, industrial base, jobs creation, all that. And so now is a good time to begin formulating a plan around that. We have all the analysis of the site now, and so it would probably behoove us to get moving on it in a positive way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you. Indeed.
All right, with that, we have reached the point in our agenda where we have requests and comments by the mayor and board members. I will say I have no requests or comments tonight. So we will start with Mr. Miller.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I get older each year, I kind of look back at some of the experiences I look forward and cherish the most. Most of these moments are generally with my family and my friends. In the past 2 years, working with this board, I've had many different experiences, some good, some not so good, but generally I enjoyed my experiences. During this time, I tried to develop friendships with some people that I had known in the past, some people that I never met. Tonight is the last official town board meeting for 2 of our members, Bob and Sharon. During their tenure on the board, I have seen their keen interest in their town. Both Bob and Sharon have shown their willingness in their own special way to improve our community. I'd like to thank them for their service what they've done for our community. But most importantly, I'd like to thank them for their friendship during this time. I personally hope the best for them in the future.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Ms. Sledge.
Well, I certainly second Mr. Miller's, comments about board members who are leaving that side. I've said, I'm gonna miss him butt in that seat. And certainly Ms. Hovis at the podium as well. So it's been a pleasure to have an opportunity to work with them. I did want to let you know that, in Ms. Hovis' absence a couple of weeks ago, she was out in Michigan. I attended the, Metropolitan Planning meeting. I haven't found anything that particularly relates to Spencer as far as the plans are concerned there. They did approve, the purchase of 4 new transit buses for the Rowan County, for Salisbury, to replace some that were worn out. So we may see some new buses coming through Spencer from time to time. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you was, Peter brought to us back in August, I think, or maybe September, the proposal to bring the planning in-house with the city of Concord rather than using the entities that they're using now. And that discussion was held at this meeting, and it was really kind of awkward because a representative from Concord was giving the presentation, but Mr. Conrad, who was there, was kind of running the meeting, and there were some, I wouldn't say allegations, but some indication that maybe there were some discrepancies or some deficiencies that had occurred with the services that Bill Conrad's group was giving for that proposal on the planning. And so there were several mayors who acted like they had never even heard anything about this before. So I was very pleased that at least I had some advanced knowledge of what was being talked about. But as a result of that, the whole thing was tabled. So there has not been any further movement on that. So that's really all I can tell you as far as the report is concerned. But it was a lengthy meeting, and we really didn't get through a great deal of it that was planned because there was so much discussion about whether this was a good move and whether the figures that we had been given were inclusive of the total cost. And as it turned out, they were not, because they had not factored in benefits and things like that for these employees that they were going to add to manage the Concord, have the city of Concord manage the program. So it's just a brief overview of a long meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sledge. Mr. Bish.
That's enough.
Speechless.
You can't be a loss for words. You don't start crying on us either.
I thank Mr. Miller for those kind expressions, and I too have I think I've always expressed that I've been extremely pleased with being a part of this board. I've met individuals that I didn't know prior to coming to Spencer, and even after being here since 2013, it took a while before I got to meet quite a few people, but I appreciate it. And as probably my last board meeting where I'll have some input, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to work with you. I try to ask the questions that people are afraid to ask, or they may sound nonsensical, but I think my perspective is kind of unusual. And I'm looking to take a break for now. Maybe I'll be back in 2 years or so. But,
Gonna run for that big 4-year term.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for allowing me to work with you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Fish.
Good luck to you.
Mr. Morgan.
I would like to reinforce what Steve said. I'll miss both of you, both Bob and Sharon. You brought a lot of wisdom and a lot of persistence to issues and problems that have plagued this town for a long, long time. And we had our disagreements, but I like the fact that we were able to work through them. And we always kept the citizens at as our focus. And so I hope that you don't become a stranger, either one of you, and that you will come back and, as I said earlier, help hold our feet to the fire when necessary.
His feet too.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Ms. Hovis.
Well, it's bittersweet, the departure, but at the same time too, it's easy to leave because I know that I'm leaving Spencer in better hands than when I got it. This board right here is making the right decisions, and they're driving this car and not letting it come off the rails as it was before. We see the differences, and you do ask the right questions. And what the board has, with the public, the community has gotten from me for the last 4 years is my passion and my persistence of my love for the community. I don't ever want to see that our people are taken advantage of. And you guys are going to make sure that happens. We got a great mayor now that's got his head screwed on, who participates in anything and everything. I've seen him, he's like a little net, man. I mean, he's like all over the watermelon. I mean, he's just all over the place. But then I see we've got experience and deep-hearted people who are up here on the board for personal gain or their personal agenda. You're here for the community. And if, with that being said, I can honestly say for me, this job of what we doing I don't care, what people don't fail to realize, my biggest thing was for public safety when I got up here for agenda-wise. I want to fight for our fire and police department because I saw where I do get it, being a former chief and still being a sworn officer, what it's like to not have the necessary equipment and the salaries. And we gave that to them this time. This board helped give that of what they didn't have. Now, I speak for the county on the county's end and say, yeah, I'm one to say don't take advantage of the help that we're getting from the county. And I thank the county very much for coming in and stepping in to help us out right about now over something that we will need to handle. The issues will need to be addressed, but that's what we do here as board members. Our job is to help address the issues. We are the voice for the community. You will now be my voice. And if you're not, I'll come in here and take my 3 minutes up on the podium. Because I already know what's going on the inside. So, and if it don't go right, I'll be like Bob. I'll come back in the next 2 years and I'll run for them 4. But seriously, I really believe that this group right here, you've already shown me there's no doubt in my mind of going ahead now and enjoying my retirement like I should. Because I am right now. And I want to thank you guys. You all are doing a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Hovis. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I ran for the board because I love Spencer and I wanted to try to do some things to help Spencer, and it's just been a pleasure working with this whole board. I hate we're losing you two. I feel like we have become a very good group to enhance each other, and every one of us has a different strength, but it's been an honor to serve. And I'm looking forward to working with the new board, but I hate we're going to lose you, but I know we'll see y'all back.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I'll just echo what everybody said. It's been a pleasure getting the chance to work with each of you. I look forward to working with 4 of you that are still going to be here in the other two, Ms. Hovis and Mr. Bish. It's certainly been a pleasure. Your wisdom, insight into a variety of matters have been helped to round out our board and help us greatly. So it's been a pleasure working with you. I did think of one other announcement that I do want to make sure that I make, and that relates to the upcoming holiday parade, because the town of Spencer will have a professional float entry, and it is my expectation that every one of you board members be on that float with us. We'll make sure that our newly elected members are also able to be present, and our hope is that we'll have a variety of our town staff that maybe aren't having to work necessarily that day. We know our public works folks and the fire department will have an entry, and our police officers will also be working with traffic control, but hopefully we will have some of our staff that will also be able to participate on that float with us as well. So be on the lookout. Peter and I will get details on the time to be there and everything for the parade. Of course, it'll start at 2 o'clock, I believe. And once I know where our lineup is over by the high school, I will let everybody know, but it ought to be a fun day. All right. With that, that is all I have. And I do believe there's a need to go into executive session for General Statute 143-318.11. And so that being the case, is there a motion to enter into closed session?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Hovis. Is there a